So hello students, let's wait for some time for others to join. And I'll request those who join just kind of write some message so that I understand that you are joined, because in the chat basically, because it will be a kind of interactive session as there has been always. Yes, good morning Shivangi. So the session will always be interactive. If you have any questions, obviously you will be able to send a message on chat. So we'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes and then we'll start. Shivangi, am I audible properly? There might be some delay because it is YouTube, but I hope I'm audible. Yes, good. So as I said, because it's YouTube, there will be little lag, and those all who are watching, please write some message so that I want to keep it interactive as possible, and I also know that who all are there and I can address accordingly. So I think let's start. So let me first explain as to what is the logic, objective and basis or intention for this particular course. Last year also we had this course. So this is basically intended for those who have finished their foundation, their own reading, at least 1 or 2 revisions, at least 1 reading and or 1 foundation course, whichever is the scene, and those who are intending to finish their optional before June, whatever might be the result. Okay, because I'm sure most of you would be waiting for your pre-result, prelims results. So, and I hope all of you kind of get a positive response from UPSC about it. But whatever might be the result, but the point is, in the month of June, it is very, very crucial to revise or perhaps at least finish your optional, and philosophy is very apt in that direction basically because it's very crisp. If you know the basic concepts, it's not very difficult to do. So the whole concept here is before June, okay, so before June ends, your 1 reading of philosophy is done. Now you might ask as to do 1 reading, why to have the course? See, basically it's a test series. This course is just additional to the test series that we have, and that is basically considering the demand of the students. Because what happens, most of these students are not able to utilize the time in the month of June properly, and end up when the result comes, and for many it becomes a surprise when the result becomes positive. So they realize that the month of June they have not been able to study properly, and because of that, the edge that you will be getting, the extra edge that you will be getting, that you are required to get to actually have a maximum marks like 270 plus, 280 plus, or possibly 300 also. That is not possible if you are not utilizing the month of June now, because it's very, very important in UPSC mains that these 3 months, you might have read it many times before, Okay, you might have already appeared in mains, maybe, but still the revision just before your exam, like these 3 months, you have to be completely in touch with mains. Otherwise, again, that extra edge which is required, I'm talking about marks more than 250, that is not possible. Okay, now otherwise the score again remains and the boundary, it's not sufficient to get you through, or maybe even if you get you through, gets you through, it's not the rank that you are getting is not perhaps what you want. So the basic idea here is next around 20 lectures we will be finishing touching upon things in with an intention that after the lecture is over today or tomorrow, you go back and revise that topic from the notes. No need to read the books now because it's not the time. Read from your notes. Those who were students of my foundation course, they would have already got the notes. Revise those notes, touch upon those notes, and also in the class we will be touching upon the PYQs. Okay, what are the kinds of questions they have been asking, how to address the question. Okay, what is the template or the model or the structure framework of the answer, what are the how the points in the answer to be mentioned, and these things. So what happens, you kind of get through the glance through the whole topic, also get to know the previous year questions, so you know how UPSC actually asks questions, how UPSC actually formulate the questions. Sometimes we keep hearing this, sometimes UPSC asks straightforward questions in philosophy, sometimes they ask very interlinking kind of questions, applied questions it is called. So how to tackle it, what is the process? Some questions are very easy, so obviously most of you would be already knowing it how to tackle, but some questions are basically required to be given enough thought to it, so that what happens when the question is asked, when the basic message of the question is to be understood, it's very important to have the general glance of the topic before that, like most of the points or all the points that the syllabus has should be in front of you when that particular thinker comes into picture. So improving your answers, first of all acquainting you with the answers, questions, PYQs, also going through the syllabus so that it helps you in revising. And after the end of the course, we will be starting with the test series, because as I said, it is a part of this thing. So if you just follow the routine as the lectures, revision, and if you want to write answers on your own, that also you can do, and then you can be very sure that now your revision and your things kind of getting into the flow. Now with respect to, as I said, in June you do first reading in such a way that now in July your one reading may not take 30 days, it may take 20 days only, it may take lesser than that also, it depends on your understanding. And next reading, only 15 days, that means you can have 2 readings in August. Okay, and this is, I am talking about, this is the minimum that you can do now, and I am talking about reading of full syllabus, the whole syllabus, and without this it's very difficult to have enough score in philosophy. Otherwise, as you already know, it has been proven every year, almost every year, barring 1 or 2, that having 300 plus marks in philosophy is also not tough. It's not impossible thing. It's possible, but how? That is possible only through repetitive revisions. Without revision, that is not going to be possible. Okay, so our main purpose why we are having this course, as I already mentioned, this course is part of the test series. So what we were thinking that, okay, initially we'll make things or introduce the things, or basically this is also revision, and I'm sure students who are sitting also going through the revisions only. So nobody is a fresh philosophy student here. That will be applicable when it is foundation course. Okay. So I hope you understood the basic purpose with which this particular course we have started off with. Okay. So let's start with, let's not waste much time on this. Let's start with the Indian philosophy. Now you know how we are going to go. First we'll cover Indian, then we cover Western, then we'll cover socio-political, and then we'll cover religion. So we'll touch upon all the topics so that when you go back and revise, it will be very easy for you to revise. And it's very, very important, as I said, the revision. Now, what comes to your mind? What are these bullet points when we talk about Charvak? Charvak means first and foremost for any thinker, important thing is epistemology. Okay, and then metaphysics. An Indian context, ethics also comes into picture. It can be also called as bondage liberation. This is specific to Indian philosophy, right? Now, epistemology and metaphysics. So any thinker, especially in paper 1, when you want to revise, when you want to revisit, the most important aspect that you need to think of is what is the epistemology there and what is metaphysics of that particular thinker. Now, what is the epistemology of Charvak? Now, what is the epistemology? Basically, in Indian context, what are the pramana that they follow, that they accept as valid source of knowledge? Prama is knowledge and pramana is valid source of knowledge. So, what do we talk about? What is the valid source of knowledge? Right? Yes. And when it comes to Charvak, that valid source is only one source, that is perception. What it is called? Pratyaksha. Yes. Good morning. Pratyaksha. So, the most important aspect, now any question that comes on Charvak, this is the starting point. Most of the time, there would be one, maximum 2 questions on Charvak in every paper. We'll see how they have asked questions on Charvak, because Charvak is a very small topic. But as I said, the starting point for almost all the answers of Charvak is mentioning that for Charvak, pratyaksham evam pramanam. That is, perception is the only valid source. Now, what happens when perception, that means when perception is only valid source means, what is the other source that Charvak is rejecting? Yes, the most important one is inference. That is anuman, which is, except Charvak, all other Indian schools accept to be a very important source, because according to them, without anuman, you cannot have anything with respect to discussions or debates or anything, because everything is inference. It also rejects, but rejection of inference is the most important thing, but it also rejects upaman. Very good. That is comparison. And also shabd, that is testimony. Now, as I said, this is a revision, so most of you, I am assuming these words are not new to you people, and I will be straight away going to it. So, now, when it comes to Charvaka's the whole syllabus that we have, how it denounces, rejects inference is one of the core part of Charvakas, the whole syllabus points that we have. So again, you need to understand any question that they have asked with respect to epistemological part, rejection of inference would be very core of your answer, whichever way, because they cannot, especially with respect to Charvak, they cannot create any other question that that does not include inference as rejection of inference. Okay, so accordingly it has to be. No need to. And what Charvak does with respect to this? Yes, because inference is rejected, these are also rejected. So Charvak doesn't spend much time on this. Okay. So this is with respect to Charvaka's epistemology. Now what is the metaphysics of Charvak? Again rejection. Rejection of what? What is the syllabus point? Transcendental entities. That's a syllabus also. Rejection of transcendental entities. Yes. So basically what it rejects? First of all, it rejects the inference. Now, because perception is the only source, material is the only reality. Because what is metaphysics? Theory of reality. So on the basis of what your epistemology is, accordingly your metaphysics will be. Okay. Now, so it rejects basically soul. Now, it rejects soul as in non-material thing. It says Deha Atmavad. It's different than Nairatmyavad of Buddhism. Very good. So that is different. This is different. And I think in one of the exams they had asked between the difference. In one of our questions also we had asked what's the difference between Dehatmavad and Nairatmyavad. Though they are talking about the similar things, similar line of thinking, but the way they present is different. Now what Charvak says, that is Dehatmavad, means what? Dehatmavad means conscious living body is the only soul. There is nothing soul other than this consciously living body. So it is very simplistic. Charvak, as you know, is very simplistic, that all the soul and other things like God, ether, liberation, mukti, moksha, everything is rejected. What is the famous line that Charvak says? And that almost I can say 85% of the questions that Charvak has been asked on Charvak, you can mention that sloka. So yes, it says Yavad Jived Sukham Jived. Okay, and Runam Katva Kritam Pibed. So this is something like ready-made stuff for you at your help in case suddenly you don't understand what to put. So it's a very famous this thing. Basmibhutasya dehasya punaragman kutaha means what? Once the deha is destroyed, there is no punarjanma. So it rejects rebirth also. Okay. Then another statement, especially those 5 statements, basically this Basmibhutasya dehasya and Trayo Vedasya Kartaro. It is there in our notes also. Dhurt Bhand Nishachara means what? This the Vedas and all religious scripture is also created by cunning people, and it has nothing to do with the God and reality. Basically, it is very, and that's why it is called materialistic school. Materialism. What is the definition of materialism? Yes, matter is the only reality. And automatically, when it comes to human life, human ethics, it transforms into hedonism. Very good. Hedonism is, yes, very good. Pleasure is the only goal, only aim or summum bonum of life. Very good. So, and okay, what are the other summum bonum is rejects? In yes, yes. So in Indian context, it is called Purushartha. Now here Purushartha means here Purush is not men, it is human. So Purushartha means Artha is basically meaning, purpose. To acquire is also to earth. But here the basic meaning is earth means purpose, meaning. So what is the meaning of human? Means what is the meaning of life? Means what is the summum bonum of life, goal of life? So it is dharma, arth, kam and moksha. So in this, basically dharma and moksha for sure rejected, and earth is also seen from the context of kam only. So here earth means earning, money, so resources. So because these two indicate material life or life of pleasure, that's why Charvaks are called hedonist. Now in Charvak also there are two, Dhurt Charvak and Sushikshit Charvak. So Dhurt are uncultured Charvak, okay, sharp hedonist, and Sushikshit is somebody who says that no, dharma in the sense of secular moral code is good thing, yes, required things to be required. Okay. So that's all actually Charvak if you see in a broad, because obviously I am not going to go into this one and small and each and every details, but broadly this is what is there anything that Charvak has told as far as our syllabus is concerned. Obviously Charvak would have told 10,000 things, but our syllabus is only this much, that as I mentioned initially, it is the metaphysics, epistemology, metaphysics and ethics broadly. Okay. Now let's see questions one by one. Now can I anyway, let us see, we'll do it later. We can just read the question and go on that way. So comment on the bearing of Charvaka's epistemology on the rejection of transcendental. By the way, last year there was no question on Charvaka, 2022. So that's why 2021 is the first question. So question, what is the meaning of the question? Comment on the bearing of Charvaka's epistemology on rejection of transcendental entities by them. What is the meaning? That bearing means the kind sense of continuity or impact, influence. Okay. Now, what does the question is asking basically? What is the question? What is this particular question is asking? We have to comment on the bearing of Charvak epistemology. We have to comment on what? Bearing of Charvak's epistemology on rejection of transcendental entities, means metaphysics. Basically, metaphysics of Charvak. So basically, they are saying the same thing that we discussed now. That is, or we'll write. So mention epistemology of Charvak and its bearing on metaphysics. Right? Now, this is a 10 marker, I guess. Yes. How would you write? Yes. So first you basically straight away jump into the main point, that is perception. Now here also you can mention this quote and you can start with quote. Yes, pratyaksham evam praman. So pratyaksha hi praman hai. Without that there is no praman. So and then This itself is a part of introduction. In one or two lines, what would you write? According to Charvak, perception is the only reality. Perception is the only praman. All other sources of praman that are accepted by Indian schools of philosophy, that is inference and others, are rejected by Charvak. Now when automatically when you introduce things, but because the specific demand of the question is talking about epistemology, so either you can mention epistemology of Charvak or again perception only reality as a subheading. So because subheading should be very clear according to what is asked, and every aspect that is mentioned in the question should be mentioned in the subheading, because what happens, points, obviously most of the points that you would be writing and others will be writing will be the same, but if you subcategorize it, it is a clear picture sent to the examiner that all the points that are asked are covered by the student. Most important, that's why, because that's the reason introduction is just introducing the topic, what you are going to write, but what that thing that you are going to write, you have to mention here. So here, when you, the point wise if you write, you have to mention about pratyaksha is the only praman, that's okay, but the most important thing is rejection of inference, you have to elaborate upon it, okay. When you write rejection of inference, here you no need to write Nyaya's response, because question is not asking about only epistemology. So you have to give the arguments that Charvak gives for the rejection of inference, because inference is a jump in the dark, leap in the dark, and inference is you cannot, the Vyapti itself is not established, and all other arguments. Yes, because you cannot have all, for example, wherever there is smoke there is fire, you cannot recheck the all cases of smoke this time of what is called present, forget about past and future, then it's a leap in the dark, because you don't know, you're just guessing, and because it has been the case till now, it's not guaranteeing that tomorrow it will be the same. So here you mention those points, how it rejects inference, because rejection of inference is the basis of Charvaka's thing. Though perception is the only praman, is the starting point, but the pillar of the Charvaka's epistemology, or the whole Charvaka's epistemology, stands on their method of how they rejected inference, because, and rest of the one last line is, because inference is rejected, everything else is automatically covered, that is testimony, because comparison is also considered as inference, a type of inference. Shabd is also type of inference. Then comes rejection of transcendental entities. Here also you can mention metaphysics of Charvak or rejection of transcendental entities. This will be another subheading. So the most important thing that I want you to focus on is how are you formulating the answer also. Okay. So because, and this is UPSC question, this is not some question that we have created, this is how. So if you see that way, I can guarantee, and it happened last time also when we had batch, that after discussion it feels that answer is not that difficult, writing answer of philosophy is not that difficult, but yes, that's only after you have revised, you know how to structure, and you have practiced. So revision of syllabus, very important. And as far as my knowledge goes, the best, the classic or the most apt optional for revision is philosophy, because you revise it so many times, because it's small. At least paper 1, you clearly know from where to start and where to end. You have notes, you have material, everything. So just you have to read again and again and understand. One more important thing, like a caution for all those who are going to trying to finish this before June, whatever may be the result, as I already mentioned, that's not important, because even if negative, you are still going to study philosophy now in June. So the most important thing is, philosophy is an abstract subject. When I say abstract, means there are no surveys done, there are no physical things to be verified like a science. It's everything abstract. Like the concept of soul is also created by human, and then explained also by human, and then rejected also by human. So there is no soul. You can go and talk about galaxy. You can talk about how hydrogen, helium, everything happens in sun. There it's very clear, and it seems that it's easy to remember because there are some anchors. In philosophy, what happens, though it is, and that's the reason UPSC has kept it smaller. Otherwise, philosophy, if you have to cover as a subject, it is a very, very huge subject. If you go with the writings of many thinkers, so many thinkers we don't even have in our syllabus. Why? Because it's very abstract. So they just want to know whether you can actually understand philosophy and write philosophy. You don't need to remember all the philosophers' points. Other optionals, what happens? Generally, all the major thinkers, they have to study. Now here also we study major thinkers, but still they are not even a tip of iceberg as far as the philosophical thinkers are concerned. In India also, we don't study all the sects. We just study broad. Buddhism also, only Buddhism, somewhere Vedanta, otherwise schools of Patanjali we don't study. There have been sects of Patanjali. There have been sects of Nyaya. On Nyaya there have been lot of studies. We don't study that. Only Buddhism, that too very briefly we study schools. So coming back to the point, what I was trying to communicate is rereading is very crucial. Like without that you cannot do. You cannot just go and write something like GS. No, especially in paper 1, but it is almost applicable to paper 2 also. That's why revisiting is very, very important. And it's not very difficult. It is very small syllabus. Just revisit many times. Okay. Now, so rejection of transcendental entities. Now, under this heading, what would you write? It is just 10 marks and you have to cover so many things. First, you write how they rejected soul, then mention about Dehatmavad, then they rejected ether. So there is only 4. Yes, exactly. Bhuta Chatushtaya. Then there are only 4 bhutas. Then third, they rejected moksha. So only basically moksha is clearly rejected, as I mentioned. Dharma is somewhere rejected. You can mention that. Dharma, Sushikshit Charvak don't reject. They say that the ethical code of the society is required. Okay. So, and what all things rejected by them? Obviously, God moksha rejected, so God also rejected. Basically, Vedas also rejected. Spiritual aspect of Veda is also rejected by them, right? See how many points you will be. In fact, it will be difficult for you to, write everything within that word limit of around 150 words for a 10 marker. Okay, and that is a good situation when you have a lot of stuff and you have to write less. But it's not a good situation where you have to write a lot and you don't have stuff. That means you are not revised it properly. Okay, and then you conclude. How would you conclude here? Now think, conclusion is also should be in sync with what question is asking and basically what you have been writing. So what is question saying here? Charvaka's epistemology is bearing on transcendental entities. Basically, as we mentioned, it's philosophy, epistemology and metaphysics. So what would you write? Generally, because as I said, syllabus is very much limited, the conclusions are almost fixed. In fact, you can fix conclusion, because when it comes to Charvak, you have to mention about how Charvak saved Indian philosophy from dogmatism, bringing in critical thinking, and as I said, saving Indian philosophy from becoming very ritualistic, okay, and a critical voice in across, because Charvaka is the only who rejects almost everything and just talks about, this life, these things in front of me. And they have done the similar job in Indian philosophy as who did in Western philosophy? this statement will be very impactful. No, logical positivist. So Charvak is also positivist, if not logical positivist, but Charvak is also positivist. What is positivist? This is very important because, and we have discussed this, positivist means somebody who only believes in positively present entities. Basically, जो दिख रहा है, जो है वो है, जो नहीं है उसको इमेजिन नहीं करना. वेरीफाइबिलिटी नहीं है तो वो पॉजिटिविज्म नहीं. सो समथिंग दैट, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, दे वुड नॉट एग्री ऑफ समथिंग existence of abhav that we talk about. Non-existence in itself is not an entity. Unless it is not existing, how can it be entity? That's the positivism. Okay. Anyway, you understood this question? Let us see second question. Now, explain the differences of conception of reality between Charvak and Jainism. Now, what is the conception of reality in Charvak and Jainism? Yes, but what is that important word when it comes to Charvak's comment on reality? Now, see, perception is the only praman, matter is the reality, but there is one more thing that Charvak comes up with, that is Swabhavad or Yadhrachavad. Yes, matter is the only reality. Swabhavad is theory of causation, because in India, Indian philosophy, again, theory of causation, epistemology, theory of causation is the eternal part of theory of reality. All the school talk about theory of causation, some or the other. Yes, see, theory of causation means they talk about not just reality, what is the relation of cause and effect. It's very important. So what is Charvaka's response to theory of causation? Swabhavad means there is no cause and effect. There is no eternal link, essential link between the two. Things just happen as a matter of inherent nature of that thing. So next logical thing, because of the inherent nature, not because some cause and effect. Okay. So, and anyway, so matter is the only reality is what Charvaka will say. What would Jainism say briefly? We'll come to Jainism also later. But briefly, what would Jainism say? What is the Jainism's concept of reality? What would you write there? This is 15 marker. We'll come to Jainism also, but for sake of just visiting it for now, briefly. What is Jainism? Jainism's basic point about reality. Okay. You have to write about the categorization of Dravya. Jainism, that the whole chapter is there with us, where it talks about astike, anastike, baddha, mukta, all, not every aspect of this. Now, obviously your starting point would be Jainism means everything soul, Charvaka means no soul. But ultimately what happens? Jainism gives all the details of Dravya. Okay, so explain the differences of conception of reality. Okay, so conceptions of reality. How Charvaka does it and how Jaina does it. Okay, so basic starting point, as I said, every aspect of Charvak you have to mention about perception, and matter is the only reality. So ultimately it comes to matter as only reality, right? Then, but here, is matter also reality? Yes, that is astike, right? Extended. And but soul, that is non-extended, is also reality. So what are the extended realities. Now here there is a one not very I can't say common point, but similar point that these two have. The conception of soul and conception of soul here, there is a similarity. Do you agree? Some sort of similarity. Now, Charvak says it is Dehatmavad, right? What is the Jaina's concept of soul? Okay, is soul extended or not extended? So according to Jaina, it is extended. So soul has extension. So in the body, like they give example of bulb and the room, or light and the room, tube and the room. So soul is like that light, which is everywhere in the room. Any corner of the room, light is there. Like that, soul in the body. It is almost similar to Dehatmavad. But Dehatmavad is not about mentioning that soul is part of, or soul is present each and every part of the body. It just generally says, or very crudely we can say, that soul is nothing but consciously living body. But here soul is eminent, present in every part of the body. So in this way, but obviously both differ, because here soul is permanent. Soul will go through the many things. Okay, Kasaya and everything Nirjara that you details will see later also. And here soul is not permanent. Punarjanma is there. Here Punarjanma is not there. So here reality is spiritual. Reality is not just material but non-material and spiritual also. Here reality is material only. Okay. So how would you write? This is 15 marker. And obviously it has to be 15 marker because you have to write two different thinkers, philosophers. Right? Explain the difference of the conception of reality between Charvaka and Jainism. How would you start? Introduction, you talk about basically Charvaka's thinking, that is materialism. Okay, and Jainism is spiritualism or outright rejection of materialism. Because Charvakas, no, Jainism is the most rigorous school when it comes to materialism or rejecting materialism. They reject materialism in their daily life with a utmost power, utmost intensity. So their rejection is always very clear cut. Whereas Charvakas, materialism itself is the thing. So materialism leads to hedonism, and Jainism is exactly hedonism is what they reject. That's why the concept of this may not be part of the answer, but generally that's why the concept of penance. That's why the concept of less possible pleasure, because you have to do all this satya, asteya, ahimsa, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Aparigraha is what? You have to completely reject materialism. That would be part of somewhere in the end as ethics, impact on ethics. Ethics is how the human being should conduct their life according to that philosophy. So because the materialism is the reality, hedonism is automatic culmination for the Charvak. But in Jainism, that's not the case. It may not be the major part of the answer, but somewhere in the end you can mention. Maybe in the conclusion also you can mention how the theory of reality of the both impacted the ethics of the both Charvaka and Jainism. Okay. Now, so you talk about matter is the only reality, and here soul and matter both are reality. Simple, straightforward. Astike, anastike, everything. and not just soul and matter, so many other realities are there. Okay, then you talk about briefly Charvaka's reality, and same points that we discussed in the last question. I no need to repeat it. Then you talk about Jaina's reality. Now Jaina's reality is soul is the starting point, or it is called Jiva, and accordingly the yoga happens. Okay, then the accumulation of matter happens, Pudgala. Okay, and then the soul gets bonded or baddh, okay, under bondage, and then obviously the concept of liberation. Now the concept of, basically here you can write, because this is 15 marker, you still have things to write. On soul briefly you can mention, or here there is another way of writing it. You can do this also, Charvaka and Jaina. And here one by one, their concept of soul, their concept of bondage, if it is there, concept of liberation, concept of God. Now, reality means anything that is whatever metaphysics that they talk about. Reality means what? Basically, theory of reality means what? Both the metaphysics you have to compare. Metaphysics means about what would you compare? Matter, I mean material world, what is their comment? Soul, God, liberation, what is their comment? Okay. So, what about God of Charvak? Reject the existence of God? Very good. What about Jain? They also reject the existence of God, but they consider Tirthankars as the followable, imitable examples. Something that we can imitate, follow. But God as such, supernatural reality, Jain also reject. Right? This is also interesting because there are some common points also. You have to mention those, because question though they have talked about the differences. Conception of reality means what? Theory of reality means what? Metaphysics. So the question is, explain the differences of metaphysics between Charvak and metaphysics of Charvak and metaphysics of Jainism. As simple as that, right? Okay. Now, so this itself will continue. Mostly, you know the what we can say, the basic thumb rule. If it is 10 markers, 1.5 page and 2 subheadings apart from introduction and conclusion. If it is 15 markers, 3 subheadings apart from introduction. And if it is 20 markers, mostly 4 subheadings also. Subheading is required because it helps you to cover maximum points. Otherwise, most of the students, what happen, they get stuck in one point and keep writing about the same point a lot. That much is not required. That's why. Okay. And then, as I said, additionally, you can mention ethics. Now, ethics is also extension of your theory of reality. In Indian, you know, epistemology. Philosophy means epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, logic, and aesthetics. So, as I said, aesthetics is not part of our syllabus anywhere, so forget it. Logic, some places it is, because logic is an instrument to communicate everything. But these 3 things are very important when it comes to Indian. That is, what is their epistemology? What is their metaphysics? And in turn, what is their ethics? Right? Because epistemology, you will give what is knowledge, what is their conception of knowledge, metaphysics, theory of reality, and ethics, automatically it impacts ethics. You be it Buddhism, there is ethics. What is the basic stuff of ethics of Buddhism? Yes, Eightfold Path. What about Patanjali, that is yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. Jainism, the whole process of liberation. Okay, and this Three Ratnas, you know, right faith, right perception, right conduct, the whole theory of Samyak, everything Samyak. So it's part of ethics. Okay. Yes, ethics is good. Yes, do's and don'ts. Here, don't confuse ethics with GS4. That is part. That is also not different. Obviously, the word ethics means the same, but here ethics means what actually they are trying to say. Whatever, because this is the knowledge. This is on the basis of that knowledge. This is the reality. So, if this is the reality, now we should conduct our life like this. So, this ethics part is very, what we can say, very crucial in Indian philosophy as compared to Western. Because not all Western philosophers give any ethical conduct. The ancient ones have given, Plato and all, what one should do, idea of good and all that. But later philosophers, they are like Descartes or Spinoza. They have been strictly philosophical. So they have not given their conducts, emphasis. At least our syllabus does not have much about it. They might have told about what is a good life, concept of good life, that goes on. But the conception of reality is what we are concerned about when it comes to Western. But in Indian, ethics is also important, right? That's why, that's the reason all the schools in India remain parallelly active. They remain active parallelly. In Western, what happens? If Aristotle comes, I mean Plato comes, after that Aristotle comes, he criticizes Plato, and Plato is completely, that time nobody is following Plato, now everybody is Aristotelian. Like that, it is in batches, but Indian, it is continuous flow. If Vedanta Veda philosophy, Vedanta philosophy, whatever Vedic philosophy, Buddhism, Jainism, Nyaya, Vaisheshik, everything parallelly, even now, it is continuing. And some, as you already know, have become different religious sects. So it continues. That's why ethics is important. And through ethics, only religious sects are surviving. Because somebody who is following the religion of Buddhism, Jainism, Vedantins, they may not be, religious person I'm saying, may not be much interested in epistemology and metaphysics. They would just agree to whatever it is. The ethics is what they follow. Because for them, religion is ethics. Rituals and do's and don'ts. क्या सही है, क्या गलत है, वो जो concept. ठीक है? And then how would you conclude in this question? Obviously, as I said, you mentioned about this dravya, the concept of dravya. Notes mein hai pura details. All the points that are there. What are dharma, adharma, motion. ठीक है? ये what is it called? Time, space, dharma and adharma. Just for motion, non-motion, action, non-action, time and space. All those aspects, details you see in notes, obviously. Then you come up with, now these points, what will happen? Each and the sub part of so-called reality is what we are talking about. Material we talked about basically. First, you talk about material only, but soul, okay. So you talk about, as I said here, see, the point is, Charvaka is very simplistic in his philosophy. So Charvaka doesn't give details like that. Okay, but Jainism has a very detailed philosophy. So their concept of soul, it has something. There is concept of bondage and liberation, it has something. There is concept of God, it has something. Like that, all the aspects if you cover. Here, what one we should not do is writing Jainism and then writing Charvaka's criticism to Jainism. That's not what is asked. That would be possible if the question is like that. You know, what are the Charvaka's response to Jaina's theory of reality? If that is the question, that would be the format. But here, question is asking you what the difference between the conception of reality between these two that we have, right? Okay. Let us see the next question. Now, critically evaluate Charvaka's rejection of Akasha as one of the elements of reality and examine their criticism of transmigration of soul. This is also 15 marks. Now, first, what is Akash? One of the Mahabhutas. So, Bhuta Chatushtay is what the question is asking about. Yeah. Critically evaluate Charvaks means now, first you have to talk about Charvaka's rejection of Akash. Then we have to critically evaluate means whether Charvaka is right or wrong in that context. Basically, not your opinion, other philosophers' opinion about how can Charvaka Akash be rejected. Number one. Number two, because what is the reason Akasha is rejected by Charvak? Because inference is rejected. Because inference is rejected, Akash is rejected. So, inference rejection also need to be criticized. It's anyway 15 markers. You're getting the point? So, there Charvaka's epistemology also need to be criticized. Then only you can criticize the Akash. So, briefly, first what would you mention? Charvaka's rejection of Akash you first mention about briefly. Okay, as one of the elements of reality, that is, according to other Indian schools, it is one of the Panchabhutas, Panchamahabhutas. What are others? Other Mahabhutas? Ether and space and Akash is all same. Agni, Jal, Vayu, Prithvi. So, fire, water, earth, air, then ether, space and Akash is same. Basically, it is Akash is not the Akash that we talk about, obviously. We already discussed this. Akash here is this space. That means these four Mahabhutas, where are they? They are held together by Akash. Like we have chair, like we have table, inside the room. The room or this particular aspect is Akash, in which there is this. Okay. Now, critically evaluate Charvaka's rejection. So, because Charvaka is positivist, so Charvaka agrees, okay, table is there, chair is there, we don't have any issue with this. But you are saying space is also there, in which chair is there. Charvaka says no, there is nothing called space because I cannot see space. Space is nothing positive. Inside so-called space, there can be positive or negative. So, how can Akash be a reality? Akash is something which holds reality. You're getting the point? So, like somebody asks you, room ke andar kya kya hai? What are things inside the room, or what are things there? You will not say there is a room and there is a laptop and there is a chair. You will say there is laptop, there is chair, there is a board, there are things, fan, whatever. But you will not say that there is room. Because inside the room only we have been asking you. That is Charvaka's logic. Because you cannot see room, see Akash, see ether, so reject it. That's the logic. Pratyaksh evam pramanam, yes. So, but we have to critically evaluate that. So now, the concept of Akash others gave, basically Jainism explains, because without Akash, their critical evaluate means first you mention about Charvak, but we have to now criticize Charvaka's concept of Akash. Why? On what basis you are saying that something is there? Where, inside which something is there? That in a something inside which everything is there is Akash. And all other thinkers talk about Akash. So you have to talk about others, basically Jainism, because Jainism, see, Charvaka had criticism with everyone, or fight, if you speak in that language, fight with everyone. So everyone had Akash, Charvaka doesn't have. Okay. So all other thinkers somewhere you have to bring in to explain their concept of Akash. Automatically Charvaka gets criticized. Okay. So how would you write? And examine their criticism of transmigration of soul. Sorry. So there are 2 points that you have to talk about. How would you, okay. This is also 15 marker. So what would be the subheadings that you would think of? Okay, whatever will be the introduction, that's okay. So first, rejection of Akash. Charvaka's rejection of Akash, you can mention. Then that also together, if you want to do that also you can do, or you can do the whichever way. Okay, rejection of Punarjanma or rejection of transmigration of soul. Then you write critical evaluation. Now the word that question is using, that's why. Now here you criticize both the aspects. Here if you want to have one more subheadings, that also we can do. So how Charvaka rejects Akash? Again same, pratyaksh, inference, okay, agrees to Prithvi, Jal, Agni, Vayu, but rejects Akash because Akash is not seen. Okay, yes. So simple, briefly, but then rejection of, and then a rejection of, okay, in the continuity if you want to write, rejection of transmigration of soul because देहात्मवाद, भस्मीभूतस्य देहस्य पुनरागमन नहीं है. Okay, so there is nothing called punarjanma because nobody remembers anything of past life, so there is no point of considering that punarjanma exists. Okay, then rejection of transmigration because soul itself doesn't exist like this. So soul is body, dehatmavad basically, soul is body, and this concept of punarjanma is created by cunning priests to exploit the masses. That also you can mention here. Now critical evaluation, you talk about first, the rejection of inference itself is wrong. So here you will mention about rejection of inference. No? So rejection of inference ka nyay criticism. You know, when nyay says that when Charvaka rejects inference, it rejects everything. What's the point? There is no point in discussing anything. Then that means Charvaka is not interested in discussing anything. Okay, all the pointers that are there in the notes, you just go go to the details of that. Then you come about how Jaina talk about their concept of space as a matter of, or as a part of dravya, anastikya, that is non-extended dravya. It's a part of reality. Without Akash, things cannot be held together because space and time are very important, and without that it cannot be held together. So Charvaka's criticism, Charvaka's conception is not correct. See, once this is, because the basis of Charvaka's logic is rejection of inference, and if you reject inference, everything else is getting rejected. Then see, in Jainism, it talks about different types of Akash. Space, two space, if you remember, the smaller space and the bigger space. Okay, so both the details as a matter of extension you can write here. Okay, Jainism will see in details because इसमें क्या है, interconnection आ रहा है, not just about Charvak. Because if you see that way, the major part of the question is not Charvak, answer. The major part of the answer is other thinkers than Charvak who criticize Charvak. Okay. Then how would you conclude again? Because Charvaka's conclusion would be, we are critically evaluating Charvak, but conclusion we have to, as I said, conclusion is always similar for all the thinkers. because every question paper there will be 1 or 2 questions from the same thinker. Generally what happens UPSC does is one question, if they are thinking of asking 2 questions for one thinker, like 2 questions from Buddhism, 2 from Jainism, one would be like a basic question and one would be interrelated question with the other thinker. So basic question is very straightforward, but while writing answer to the basic question also what we have to do? Criticize. So criticize means what? We have to come up with other thinkers. Okay. So what would you write? What would you write here? The concept of Akash is though rejected by Charvaka, is the rejection is rejected by all other Indian thinkers, and also some of the Western thinkers consider space and time, like Kant considers space and time to be existing. He says that it exists in your mind because that's our inherent categorical imperative is there. You can mention Western if you remember that time, because it depends on how much revision you have, but that also you can do here. Okay. Any other point that you think we can add here? Yes, we did not criticize this. Sorry. The pointers to criticize criticize the criticism of transmigration of soul. So when Charvaka rejects Punarjanma, we have to bring in others to criticize it. Okay. So this is more like a paper 2, soul, immortality and rebirth question. Okay. But here you have to talk about soul being Atma. The very meaning is essential. So it says, if it is not soul, so that means nothing has any sense. A sense of continuity, if you remember this we discussed in Vedanta also, Shankaracharya. The concept of Atma, and there is a debate between Shankaracharya and Buddhism. You know this Sangatvad, Nairatmyavad and essentialism, that is Atmavad. So without something being essential, what is the continuity? Like for example, if you reject soul, what is the yesterday's person X and today's person X to be same? If like what happens if there is no soul? So if I have done something 10 years back, why I should be punished today? Who are you punishing? It is the same continuity that you are punishing. That means there is something permanent. And without the sense of permanency, how would you recognize, identify someone as that particular someone? That's the reason we consider Atma as being there, right? Another thing is the concept of morality also. Ethics and morality, which others have experienced, also explain other thinkers, that moral obligation cannot be fixed if we do not consider soul or Atma to be there. On what basis that you are going to do it? So all other Indian thinkers and bondage and liberation, there have been all the thinkers like Buddhism, Vedanta, Shankaracharya, Patanjali, they are saying they have been individuals who experienced liberation. Yes or no? Buddha himself and Jainism also and others. So when they have experienced liberation, means what? There is soul. Whose liberation otherwise? You know, so liberation, the concept of liberation is also used to criticize that when you say there is no transmigration. See, if there is permanent soul, what would happen to that soul after death? There has to be some punarjanma. Otherwise, what would happen to the soul? Unless you realize Brahm or you realize Nirvana or you realize Kaivalya Gyan, then you may not come back. So, this transmigration of soul that Charvaka rejects received criticism. This is actually an ulta question. Normally what we think, people talk, Charvaka criticizes. Now the here question is asking the counter criticism or counter response that the others are giving. That is the basic stuff of the question. Okay, so that's why I talked about Nyaya also, because in Nyaya, you know, Nyaya says something, then Charvaka says that inference is useless, then Nyaya again responds. In the same way, all others are also responding, because this is also very, like especially Jainism will say, this Charvaka's concept leads to hedonism. So, in society, hedonism is not considered to be positive word. That means this is wrong. Or the conception that there is no soul, there is no transmigration is wrong. So, Charvaka gets criticized. Okay? Are you able to understand the flow of the lectures and flow of purpose and the context of the lecture? Because now you might have obviously realizing that, okay, so many things I had read before prelims, now I have to go back and revisit. That's the basic purpose of the lecture. So when you go back now, at least try to read up everything that is there in notes, touch upon everything, and the things that I do not explain are the details in this lecture, like what happens in foundation. We do not explain those things as in details now. So it's now you have to go back and revisit them. This is the way you will be able to make yourself ready by the time we start with the test. That is in July, first week, somewhere. Now, next question. Is this visible on the screen? Are you people also able to read? Or you have to increase this? This much is okay. At least I think it's visible on the screen. What is wrong according to Charvakas with the following argument? All men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Justify your answer with arguments. What is this question? Actually, it's very easy question. What is this question asking about? Yes, very good. All men are mortal is a fact. So the question is asking how Charvaka rejects Vyapti. Right? So how Charvaka rejects Vyapti and what is the criticism to it? Justify your answer. So what is wrong according to Charvak? You have to write and justify your answer with argument. Means the Charvaka's argument, not your argument. Charvaka's argument, you have to apply to this exam. How would you do that? First, bring out what is Vyapti here. Now, this particular statement is a syllogism or Aristotelian logic, it is called. Syllogism is enough to mention there. In which all men are mortal is a, yes, but what it is called, basically Vyapti you can mention invariable statement, invariable concomitance, universal statement basically. So when you write about this, all men are mortal. Okay, so Socrates is a man. Okay, that is a perception. प्रत्यक्ष है, कोई इशू नहीं है चारवाक को. Therefore, Socrates is mortal, but this conclusion is based on some Vyapti. This is inference only, no? What is this inference called? Deductive inference or inductive inference? Deductive logic, inductive logic. Do you remember? It is both. All men are mortal is inductive. Through the experience you already conclude, there is nothing to. Now you deduce from that inductive logic or inductive statement that because Socrates is man, therefore Socrates is mortal, because, again inductive. So this is inductive logic and the whole process is deductive logic. Okay? This they may use in Western, especially Western philosophy. These words they use and people get confused because in our syllabus we don't use these words many times, so we tend to forget. Okay? Now, so basically criticism of Vyapti, and then what would you do? Oh, 15 mark it is, right? Right, no? This is very important because this habit is very important. The moment question comes, you should be able to visualize in what way I am going to write. So, what is the question saying? So, how would you write introduction? Here, what would you write in introduction? Because it's little different question, right? They have asked some example. It's not a typical theoretical question. So, normally we know what to write in introduction. Here, Vyapti, inference, yes. You can say rejection of inference also. So, basically, nothing else. You write the same thing. Charvaka's perception and it rejects inference. Okay. And this particular statement, or maybe with respect to this, is enough. This is Charvaka's Charvaka's base of Charvaka's epistemology and metaphysics is on accepting perception as the only praman and outright or categorical rejection of inference. Then comes rejection of inference. Now here you mention how all men are, or the present example is an example of deductive reasoning and an inference, in which all men are mortal is a Vyapti and Charvaka rejects Vyapti. Now then you have to mention why Charvaka rejects Vyapti. This is the problem which Charvaka is having. Charvaka is not having any problem. Okay, this also you need to mention once. Socrates is a man, Charvaka do not have any problem with this. Charvaka has problem with this, and hence the conclusion of this. So, this is Vyapti and this is inference. So, both basically arguments are the same, but you have to mold the argument with respect to the given present example, this example. So, one more thing, as I said, you can first mention about, this is also a one way of writing, perception as valid. So, perception is the only praman. So, what happens? This statement, you mention that Charvaka agrees. Charvaka do not have any problem. The question format is, what's wrong according to Charvaka? So, there is nothing wrong according to Charvaka in that statement. Okay. Then you, this is very brief, so you can write about rejection of the inference, and in that Vyapti, that is all men are mortal. No, Vyapti and inference are not same. Vyapti, like for example, in this statement, all men are mortal is Vyapti. It is a universal relation, and use of, with the help of Vyapti, you deduce something, that is inference. Socrates is mortal is the inference. Now, Socrates is a mortal is not a perception knowledge for you, because Socrates has not died in front of you. Okay, Socrates may die tomorrow, but Socrates did not die for you or for Socrates himself, because this statement is famous in Western philosophy when Socrates himself says this about himself to explain things. So, when Socrates says, I am mortal, how would he know? By perception. Because by the time he is mortal, dead, who would know? So, he will not be there to know. So, he is inferring it. So, this is inference and this is Vyapti. somebody is asked whether Vyapti and inference are the same. They are not the same. So this is Vyapti, that is, whenever there is a smoke, there is fire, is a Vyapti. This building is fire, smoky, that means, there must be some fire. This is inference. So universal relation is Vyapti, and the conclusion that I am drawing now is an inference. So you know things through inference, you don't know things through Vyapti, you know this. You don't know things by Vyapti. Only Vyapti is there. Okay, wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Okay, but unless you see smoke somewhere, you cannot conclude that there is fire. So hetu होना चाहिए, पक्ष होना चाहिए. Sorry, पक्ष होना चाहिए. Basically, पक्ष is that's yes. So without paksh, there is no inference. Okay. So now rejection of inference. Then what would you write? Yes, and in fact, I would suggest rejection of Vyapti to be separate subheading here. Points same. Why they reject? Leap in the dark, and you cannot know the future and past. You cannot know even all the concepts today and all that, all the instances for today and all that. Everything you cancel. Then obviously we have to write criticism. See, this is like a thumb rule in paper 1 and to some extent paper 2 also, but in paper 1 for sure. Even if they are not asked, keep habit of writing criticism. Now what would you write in criticism? Other thinkers. Who comes here? Comes into picture? Yes, very good. And that's enough. Because here we are not talking about other aspect of Charvaka. God, liberation, ether. So don't bring any other person. Nyaya is enough. How Nyaya responds that, others also respond to the Charvaka in the same way. Even Jainism also says the same. Inference is a valid source of source of knowledge. How are you rejecting it? This is actually inference specific question, but interesting thing is they have, and this is I like this question because it's very good formulation, because I can guarantee you somebody who has just mugged up notes will not be able to know लिखें क्या इसमें, because we have to somewhere decode that this is Vyapti, this is a deductive reasoning, this is the inference. Inference is what Charvaka rejects because Vyapti is rejected. Everything has to be mentioned, because suddenly people think that in fact ये तो वेस्टर्न वाला सवाल आ गया. This is the Western philosophy. Why it has come in section 2 of paper 1? I am sure many students would have, because in the tension in the exam hall, they would have perceived like this. ये कैसे आ गया? You're getting my point? So those who have the conceptual clarity, as you know, 3 things are very important for getting maximum marks in philosophy. That is conceptual clarity, very, very, very important. Second, revision. How many revisions in total? At least 10, but actually 10 to 20 basically. Actually, if you revise it 10 times, 11th revision is like a cakewalk for you. Within 1 week, you can revise whole philosophy. If you have revised 10 times before, in the same continuation, I am saying. It's very interesting, but the point is most of the students don't reach till there. Somewhere, I don't know what happens. They don't revise that much time. And revision is just revisiting, there's nothing new. So one is conceptual clarity, second is revision, and third is Shivangi said it is 20 revisions, if you remember. She was foundation student before. So third is answer writing. So what we are doing here now is mostly touching upon the revision aspect and answer writing. Okay. Now, next question. Are the Charvakas consistent when they hold that inference is not a source of knowledge? We already covered. See, question is repeated so many times. So, at least one thing is sure that this 10 marks or 15 marks, अभी पिछले बार नहीं आया तो इस बार चारवाक तो आएगा ही. तो ये तो पक्का हो गया कि that much marks you already have. चारवाक में क्या है? उसमें कुछ confusion होगा लिखने में. चारवाक तो कम से कम चारवाक तो अपना एक हाथ में. इसमें क्या लिखेंगे, वही चीजें, इन्फरेंस लिखना है, देन न्याय का लेके आना है. एंड ओ आर दे चारवाक कंसिस्टेंट मीन्स somewhere in the conclusion, or this is very important. So this is the thing, every question has their own demand, so little bit tweaking is also required. This is 10 marker, no? Yeah, 15 it is. 10. So inference is not source of knowledge, so you will again introduce in the same way, rejection of inference, or okay, you can do this, rejection of inference. Okay, then criticism, and by nyaya, basically you can straight away say nyaya, because it is, nyaya is the representative of all. And then consistent, this also you can mention, or Charvaka's consistency, this also you can mention. Maybe you can write only 1 or 2 points here, but this separate subheading will communicate that again all the aspects of the question are. Otherwise what will think, consistency है नहीं, वो लिखना है, बट क्यों ना उसको उसी सबहेडिंग के अंदर लिखे, so that it is clearly communicated to the next the examiner. Got the point? How would you conclude? Same Charvaka's conclusion. As I said, every exam there will be only one time Charvaka will be asked, maximum 2 times, and it has not happened much. एक पिछली बार तो एक बार भी नहीं है, एक भी सवाल नहीं है. तो Charvaka's materialism, hedonism, critical thinking, like logical positivist, यही कंक्लूजन, कोई इशू नहीं है. उससे क्या होता है, all the aspects are touched. ठीक है. Then is Charvaka's rejection of inference acceptable to the other system of philosophy? Same. Now here other systems of philosophy में again representative न्याय ही होगा, लेकिन आपको जैनिज्म और बुद्धिज्म का एक एक लाइन मेंशन भी करना पड़ेगा. They also said the same thing. Even Jainism also said that if Charvaka rejects inference, that means they are rejecting the process of discussion and debate itself. Okay. Then, if not, why? So, is Charvaka rejection of inference acceptable to the other system of the philosophy? If not, why? Same answer. चारवाकास अगर पूरा सिलेबस चारवाक जैसा होता तो कितना बढ़िया होता. क्वेश्चन वही है, इन्फरेंस, मटेरियलिज्म, हेडोनिज्म, परसेप्शन ओनली प्रमाण, एंड रिजेक्शन ऑफ ट्रांसेंडेंटल एंटिटीज. इसके अलावा कोई सवाल ही नहीं आएगा. I can guarantee you no other optional this happens, that thinker is fixed and almost the question is also fixed. Only thing is little bit, the stuff is the same. इसको बोलते हैं ना कि मसाला सेम ही है, सब्जी पनीर की बनाओ, आलू की बनाओ, मशरूम, मसाला करी जो है सेम ही रहती है. ठीक है. तो is Charvaka rejection of inference acceptable to the other system of philosophy? If not, why? Do you think the views of the other system to be justified? Give reasons for your answer. Now again your answer is, it is like this, because in philosophy something is tenable, acceptable, means something has to be consistent, something has to be logically consistent, then only it has to be acceptable something, right? How to write will make all the difference. Okay. I thought he is asking something. Yes, but as I said, it's a 3-pronged strategy. Without these 3 legs, your success cannot stand. That is one. Unless there is conceptual clarity, you cannot revise it efficiently. Unless you revise it efficiently and conceptual clarity, you cannot write it effectively. And it is very clear. There is nothing, उसमें ज़्यादा कोई करंट ये इसको लगाना होता है, कुछ नहीं करना होता. It's very very clear, very very limited. Only thing is efforts डालना पड़ते हैं to read again and again. Okay, so same question. Only thing is this consistency part also you need to mention here also, because as this question is saying, do you think the views of the other system are justified? Now again, as I said, justified is consistent, logically tenable. Kabhi kabhi in the exam itself, the words will be like this: tenable, logically consistent, logically sustainable. ऐसे ही शब्द ही आएंगे, ठीक है ना? Give reason for your answer means same arguments. Now here, in what way Charvaka is not consistent means philosophy में even they are saying paper 1 basically, and even to some extent paper 2, even if they are saying that your arguments, it's not your personal arguments. मुझे तो नहीं लगता चारवाक मुझे तो चारवाक ठीक लगता है, ऐसे नहीं. रीजनेबली अदर थिंकर्स क्या बोल रहे हैं, सबका लॉजिक वहां लिखना है. आपका पॉइंट मतलब आपका कोई जजमेंट पास नहीं करना है. बहुत लोग ये सोचते हैं कि गिव यूर आंसर मीन्स मैं अपना कुछ बोल दूं. नहीं, अपना कुछ नहीं बोलना, ठीक है ना. द सोल इज नथिंग बट कॉन्शियस बॉडी. What are the reasons for Charvakas holding this view? What are the reasons? Now I'll not. It's again repetitive kind of thing. What are the reasons for Charvakas holding that view? Okay. What is the always starting point for a Charvaka? Perception is the only reality. I mean praman. Sorry, not reality. Praman. Rejection of inference. So what happens? Okay, matter is the only reality, so body is the only reality. So so-called soul is nothing but body only. That's all. This is the chain of thoughts which Charvaka comes up with. Same logic that initially you mentioned. Initially you mentioned that it is perception. Inference is rejected basically. So anything that is non-positive, non-material doesn't exist. Right? When asked if Charvaka consider inference as a source of knowledge, shouldn't we just focus on that aspect? No. Inference as a source of knowledge, Charvakas are not consistent. I mean, Charvaka don't agree that inference has a valid knowledge. Okay. So, here the question was inference. And do you think, yes, in this particular question, Utkarsh, exactly. You have to remain on the inference. Here you no need to mention about transcendental entities, God and soul and everything. But you have to mention criticism of Nyaya. But here, conscious living body means now the question itself is asking you to bring in basically metaphysics, existence of soul and soul other than body, over and above body. That is not present according to Charvaka. So you talk about the same. Okay. So obviously, if it is about knowledge, see, basically epistemology and metaphysics, the two compartment. Unless they have indicated, don't jump into the other compartment. Just like that. Okay. So soul is nothing but conscious living body. Dehatmavad. Okay. Chaitanya Vishisht Deha eva Atma. So Atma is nothing but CBL, consciously, CLB, consciously living body. CLB लिखो मत, वो बस याद रखने के लिए. Okay, then what are the reasons for Charvaka holding this view? Because of its epistemology. So epistemology is the reason, perception is the only praman, is the reason why Charvaka holds that body is the only source. And all other things Charvaka criticizes. Okay. What would be Charvaka's view on Vyapti? We already note. You see the notes here, like Charvaka's rejection of Vyapti, Charvaka's rejection of inference. Can this be acceptable? As I said, no. Different words they use. Acceptable, tenable, consistent, rational. Can this view be acceptable to Nyayakas? No. Give your answer for the reason. Smoke and fire. That example also we can give. But generally what happens? Smoke and fire is a, see, different example like what happens in GS. You know, you just give different examples and there will be chance of slightly more marks. In philosophy that doesn't work. Best is to give classical example. Snake and rope. milk and curd, fiber and cloth, seed and tree, and smoke and fire. Classic examples, because they are so much discussed. What happens the moment you mention the example, if examiner understands, okay, you understood the concept. डिफरेंट एग्जाम्पल लिख के ऐसा, वो ऐसे नहीं है ना कि इसमें थोड़ा अलग लिखना है. यू कैन राइट क्या अरिस्टोटल सोल इज मॉर्टल एंड वो वाला, उसमें भी लिख सकते हैं. बट स्मोक एंड फायर इज दी वेरी क्लासिक एग्जाम्पल. उसमें क्या होता है, अदर एस्पेक्ट्स ऑल्सो यू कैन क्लियरली एक्सप्लेन, बिकॉज वो वेल एस्टेब्लिश्ड फैक्ट है. ओके. एंड अनदर प्रॉब्लम, वो आप डिटेल में आपने देखा होगा, जो व्याप्ति में भी बहुत अलग अलग व्याप्ति होती है. हाउ व्याप्ति इज एस्टेब्लिश्ड. So this is a very class, other Vyaptis that are very, what we can say, what is it called? All, like for example, all crows are black, or all bachelors are unmarried. Okay, so that is also a Vyapti, but that is like a rhetorical Vyapti. That's like something like analytical truth. Here we have to have synthetic truth as a Vyapti. It's more explainable. We can bring it to the normal example. Otherwise, all bachelors are married. ये तो व्याप्ति ही है. Isn't it a व्याप्ति? Any statement which talks about all is a व्याप्ति, because you are giving universal statement, generalization. ठीक है. Limits of knowledge and the world are determined by my sense perception. What is the connotation of the question? See, this I am not explain the arguments of Charvaka rejection of transcendent entities straightforward as syllabus का है. मैं कुछ ज़्यादा सोचना नहीं. Limits of knowledge and the world are determined by my sense perception. प्रत्यक्ष एवं प्रमाण वही लिखना है. Discuss the claim of Charvaka. प्रत्यक्ष, inference, and limits of my knowledge and the world are determined means somewhere briefly also mention about metaphysics, how it rejects other rejects transcendental entities and other aspects briefly, because it is not just about knowledge but about also world. Right? समझ में आ गया? Why do Charvaka do not believe in the validity of inference? Because व्याप्ति एस्टेब्लिश नहीं हो रही, तो inference में हम क्यों बिलीव करें? What logic do they give for their belief? What logic did they give? तीन चार केसेस है ना. डार्क है, लीप इन द डार्क है. You cannot know the present cases. You cannot know the all cases because concept of all itself is infinite, right? So how would you know all cases? Okay. तो उसके बाद के फिर वही सिमिलर cause and effect. Okay, ये थोड़ा अलग है. On what basis does Charvaka rejects cause effect relationship? 2012 में आया था. स्वभाववाद and see, always whenever you say स्वभाववाद, you have to talk about यदृच्छवाद. यदृच्छवाद is mechanism, mechanistic view. There is no purpose, there is no creator, there is no operator of the world. Right? Here, स्वभाववाद is cause and effect. That is, what is the reason next thing is happening? Not because cause and effect, it's because it is inherently. That's how it is programmed. That's all. There is no cause. Because what happens with the cause? If you see that if this effect has a cause, means that cause also has a cause, then it goes to eternal. And almost all of the philosophers has to answer this. What is uncaused cause? Prakriti is like uncaused cause for the material world. Something like that you have to answer. You have to go. That Charvaka doesn't agree. तो चार्वाक से कॉज एंड इफेक्ट कंसेप्ट ही नहीं होती. ये बस स्वभाववाद है, चीजें अपने स्वभाव से चल रही है. कोई यस सुपर नेचुरल नहीं है. नहीं सी नो आई विल टेल यू माइन्यूट डिटेल्स. माइन्यूट डिफरेंस बिटवीन द टू आई विल एक्सप्लेन ब्रीफली. सी व्हेन यू से स्वभाववाद एंड व्हेन यू से यदृच्छवाद, स्वभाववाद इज कॉल्ड नेचुरलिज्म, और sorry, यदृच्छवाद is called mechanism, right? This is the response to theory of causation. This is the response to teleology. What is teleology? Yes. What is the purpose towards this is happening? See, I'll explain it simple. Everything that you are doing is with the purpose of getting selected. Right? Like you walked from the room, you came here, all the actions that you're doing with some purpose. We know this purpose. But you could not come here because it was heavily raining. So, you coming here, teleology, but you could not come here. So, here Charvaka through स्वभाववाद says cause and effect अपने ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, and God operator purpose ऐसा भी कुछ नहीं है. समझ में आया? So when it rejects God, purpose, operator, it brings in yadrच्छवाद. They are similar, but they are not exactly the same. So स्वभाववाद is when it rejects theory of causation. That's why if you remember, when we discuss theory of causation, what are the things? सत्कार्यवाद, असत्कार्यवाद. What is pratyuta samutpadvad? Then within asatkaryavad, there are two basically, aramvad and pratyuta samutpadvad. And then within satkaryavad, others, you know this. But Charvaka says, my response to this debate called, ये लोग debate कर रहे हैं theory of causation. मेरा response तो ये स्वभाववाद, ना cause है, ना effect है, ना असत्कार्य सत्कार्य कुछ नहीं. Because be it सत्कार्यवाद और असत्कार्यवाद or even pratyuta samutpadvad, everybody agrees with these concrete concepts called cause and effect. Here, Charvak says, nothing is cause, nothing is effect, it's just natural evolution. उसका कोई कारण नहीं है, it's just a train of continuity. स्वभाव है वैसे ही, जो जैसे हो रहा है, जो सामने हो रहा है, बस वो ऐसा है तो ऐसा ही करेगा, उसके पीछे कोई कारण नहीं है. Concept मतलब see, it's like a response to स्वभाववाद, it's response to theory of causation basically, और response to सत्कार्यवाद basically, because इंडिया में theory of causation शुरू ही कब हुआ था? जब सांख्य ने सत्कार्यवाद लेके आ गया. You know ना, from our point of view, Sankhya is the oldest school, philosophical school. Vedic literature is a different thing, and Sankhya is not against Veda. Okay, they are not Nastic school, they are atheist. God को नहीं मानते सांख्य, पता है ना, बट अथॉरिटी ऑफ वेदास को मानते. ये एक बार प्री में भी आ चुका था सवाल, दैट सांख्य इज अ एथिस्टिक स्कूल. बहुत लोगों को लगा सांख्य कैसे एथिस्टिक हो सकता है, सांख्य तो सांख्य योग, तो बहुतों ने लिख दिया कि हाँ वो थीस्ट है जिनको फिलोसफी ऑप्शन नहीं. प्री में एक आध सवाल आता ही है ऐसा. इस बार कौन सा आया था? एक आया था कोई, मैं देख नहीं पाया. शंकराचार्य, ठीक. पिछली बार वो आया था रामानुजाचार्य के रिलेटेड आया था, स्टैच्यू ऑफ इक्वालिटी जो बनाया था उसके रिलेटेड कुछ आया था. एनीवे, ठीक है. सो दिस इज व्हाट यू हैव टू फोकस, एंड दिस बिकॉज ये इसका सिस्टर आर्गुमेंट ही है, तो जाते जाते उसके बारे में लिखना. ठीक है. So this statement, no? Just as the skepticism of Hume helped Kant to come out of the dogmatic slumber, so also the Charvaka's philosophy saved Indian philosophy from dogmatism. Literally, ये as it is हमेशा चारवाक के इसमें कंक्लूजन करके लिख सकते हैं हर क्वेश्चन में. मोस्टली हर क्वेश्चन में, जैसे एज आई सेड, एज इट इज स्टेटमेंट कैन बी वेरी गुड कंक्लूजन। मैंने पिछली बार भी बोला था ये, क्योंकि चारवाक का एक सवाल आएगा तो स्टेटमेंट रिपीट तो नहीं करना पड़ेगा, लिखो। मैंने लॉजिकल पॉजिटिविस्ट बोला, ह्यूम की जगह आप लॉजिकल पॉजिटिविस्ट भी लग सकते, बिकॉज दे आर ऑल्सो क्रिटिकल थिंकर्स। बट ह्यूम का इंपॉर्टेंस है क्योंकि ह्यूम उनके पहले आया था। यू नो, व्हेन वेस्टर्न फिलोसॉफी वाज ऑलमोस्ट ऑन द वर्ज ऑफ बिकमिंग डॉगमेटिक, यू नो, रैशनलिज्म को बहुत, एवरीबडी वाज रैशनलिस्ट। डेकार्ट के बाद डेकार्ट, स्पिनोजा, लाइबनिज, कांट हिमसेल्फ वाज अ रैशनलिस्ट, यू नो दिस, and rationalism was actually having upper hand. But when Hume came and he criticized everything, then even Kant also started thinking that नहीं, बात तो अलग, वो आपको पता है फिर बाद में how he incorporated empiricism and rationalism both and created new philosophy. Okay, ठीक है। State and evaluate the critically. Charvaka's view on the perception is the only praman, वही है। Okay, Charvaka's reputation of anumana itself is a process of anumana. ये कितने मार्क का है? तो अभी ये वाले सवाल हमें इतना देखने की जरूरत, वो बस मेरे बैंक में, क्वेश्चन बैंक में है। तो पहले 60 मार्कर्स आते थे, देखो, डिस्कस द थ्योरी ऑफ नॉलेज अकॉर्डिंग टू चारवाका फिलॉसफी, पूरे नोट्स एज इट इज छाप के आ जाओ, 2006 में आया। बट नाउ डेज दिस टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चन डोंट कम, सो इतना कोई इतने करने की जरूरत नहीं है, ठीक है। जैनिज्म देखें, ज्यादा फास्ट तो नहीं हो रहा है, बट फास्ट तो करना ही पड़ेगा, बिकॉज अदरवाइज रिवाइजन कैसे होगा। आई होप कि इट्स नॉट यू आर नॉट परस्यूइंग दैट टू बी अ क्या फुल फ्लेजेड लेक्चर, ठीक है। रिवीजन ही होगा, जाके दोनों देखने पड़ेंगे, क्योंकि कल बुद्धिज्म देखेंगे, फास्ट होगा, तभी वो कर पाएंगे, ठीक है। ओके, जैनिज्म, व्हाट आर द बेसिक पॉइंट्स इन जैनिज्म, like what comes to your mind talk about Jainism? No, that is religion. The most important, the first thing is Syadavad. Our syllabus I am asking, not Jainism in general. वो अब प्री का इम्पैक्ट है आपके ऊपर, अभी प्री में होता है ना ये तीर्थंकर वगैरह, कल्चर में पढ़ते हैं। देन सप्तभंगिनाएं, then now to you must remember third important concept. Yes, very good शिवांगी, अनेकांतवाद। भूल गए क्या? इसी के लिए रिवीजन है, ये क्लासेस है ही इसी के लिए। इसमें रिव्यू मतलब वी ऑल्सो ग्लांस थ्रू, यस, नए इज सप्तभंगिनाएं बेसिकली, यस, एंड देन इट टॉक्स अबाउट द्रव्य, the whole categorization of reality. It is also categories, no, categories of dravya, extended, not extended. Then in extended there is jeev, ajeev, okay, and in the jeev there is baddh and mukt, and in baddh there are different types. What are the types? ये see, this is the thing, philosophy conception, ओके, आई नो यू अंडरस्टैंड, फाउंडेशन करने के बाद कंसेप्ट तो क्लियर हो जाता है कि मोटा मोटा क्या बोल रहे हैं, लेकिन वो जो है ना, जैसे फिगर, आई मीन दैट स्ट्रक्चर, दैट टेबल, ये चीजें तो एज इट इज 10 बार 15 बार लिख के रटनी पड़ती। और लाइक इफ यू काइंड ऑफ मग अप नाउ, मेंस लिख के आ गए, नेक्स्ट टाइम जब जून में आएंगे, मान के चलो फिर से मेंस देनी पड़ी, फिर से वो रटना पड़ता है, वो भूल जाते हैं, सभी भूलते हैं, बिकॉज फिलोसॉफी एब्स्ट्रैक्ट होती है, तो इतना याद नहीं रहता, ठीक है। तो इसको वो जो पूरा है ना, नोट्स में भी है, एंड दैट हेल्प्स यू द मोमेंट यू पिक्चराइज दैट, व्हाट हैपेंस, इमीडिएटली यू आर एबल टू कनेक्ट द आंसर। कुछ भी क्वेश्चन पूछा जाए, इफ यू हैव मटेरियल विथ यू, ऑन दिस स्पॉट यू कैन थिंक एंड राइट द आंसर। दैट्स व्हाट इज एग्जैक्टली रिविजन इज, ओके। देन बॉन्डेज एंड लिबरेशन, what is liberation according to Jaina? Kaivalya Gyan. No, reaching to the highest is general. I am saying specific. If I ask what is the liberation according to Buddhism, Hmm. Nirvana. What is the liberation according to yoga? There also it is Keval. Keval also word is used there. Samadhi is also there. What are the two types of samadhi? Samapragyata samadhi, asamapragyata samadhi. Exactly that's the reason we are sitting and kind of discussing so that you get a hang of things and get a chance to revise yourself. ठीक है? Okay. So what we are discussing? So what is Syadvad? Sorry, what is Syadvad? Yes. So Syad. Syad. Syat means maybe is not a very, but it's still maybe is not about uncertainty. Normally we use maybe in the sense that maybe आया होगा, but here maybe is not uncertainty, it is relativism, not even possibility. That's the problem. Relativism means in a particular context it is true. It is not कि शायद सही हो सकता है, गलत हो सकता है, नहीं, सही वो है बट पर्टिकुलर कंटेक्स्ट है, इसलिए वो सत्य है और सियात है, जैसे भी उसको आप बोलोगे सियात, रिलेटिविज्म, राइट. व्हाट इज अनेकांतवाद? So what is the word for this? Yes, Shivangi said somehow. Yes, maybe or somehow is also word generally used here. Somehow is basically means in a particular context, from a particular lens, in a particular situation. Anekantavad is pluralism. So the whole philosophy of Jainism is RRP. What is RRP? What is RRP? Relativistic, realistic pluralism or realistic relativistic pluralism. Realism means जो मैटर नॉन मैटर रियल तो चीजें हैं अकॉर्डिंग टू देम, निहिलिज्म तो नहीं है, नॉन रियलिज्म तो नहीं है. तो ये सवाल में भी वर्ड इस्तेमाल हुआ है. प्लूरलिज्म इज अनेकांतवाद, रिलेटिविज्म इज सयादवाद, एंड रियलिज्म इज concept of dravya, concept of astika, anastika, all the categories it exists. Okay. Realistic, relativistic pluralism. Yes, very good. Siddhu, very good Siddhu. Okay. Then, anything else that you remember? The story of elephant and blind man. ठीक है. What is Syadvad? How many? Oh, okay. What is Saptabhangi Nay? Sapt is, Bhangi is bhag, categories or types or forms. Nay is judgment. So it is 7 forms of judgment. Now many people also do this mistake that सप्तभंगी नहीं और शायदवाद एक ही तो है. जैसे somebody asked this question, व्याप्ति और इन्फरेंस एक ही तो है. नहीं, एक नहीं है. They are heavily related, but they are not same. So what is the difference between saptabhangi nay and syadvad? Yes. See, yes, you are right. So basically, what is nay? judgment. Now, why the word? How Nai is different than Praman? You know, no? Nai and Praman are different things. When you say knowledge, so there are two types of knowledge, Praman and Nai. Because Nai is judgment. Praman is not a judgment, it's not relative, this is absolute. This is relative because judgment is always relative, no? Now, basically, every knowledge that we consider knowledge, apart from the Kaivalya, the spiritual knowledge, worldly knowledge is not knowledge, is always a judgment. Always. See, this is a chair, I say. So, according to Jainism, this is chair in a particular context for a particular person in a particular scenario. So, every judgment that you, every so-called knowledge that we have with the worldly aspects, it's always relative. This is not applicable. Relativism is not, this is a criticism of Jainism also. No? If everything is relative, Syadvad itself is relative. But they say no. The knowledge of Tirthankar, जो उनके बुक्स में लिखी है, जो तीर्थंकर ने खुद, वो रिलेटिव नहीं, वो एब्सोल्यूट नॉलेज, वो क्लैरिफाई करते हैं. हमारा नॉलेज रिलेटिव हो सकता है, तीर्थंकर का नॉलेज रिलेटिव नहीं है, एब्सोल्यूट. So that's why Syadvad as a concept is a absolute knowledge, not a relative knowledge. ठीक है? So there are 7 ways of judgment. Now 7 ways of judgment means there are 7 different types. To basically, when you say something about something as a real, judgment is basically about from you, no? It's not just grasping the reality, it is expressing the grasp. समझ में आया कि आपने जब बोला कि it feels warmer for me, थोड़ा गर्म लग रहा है, so that statement is judgment from you about the room. Maybe मुझे थोड़ा fever वगैरह आ गया होगा, I am feeling comfortable. You're getting the point. So judgment is always about you. So there are 7 different ways you have the judgment. What are the 7 different ways? भूल गए. अस्ति, नास्ति, अस्ति नास्ति, and fourth, most important, अनिर्वचनीय, indescribable, and फिर उसके 3, undescribable अस्ति, indescribable नास्ति, indescribable अस्ति नास्ति. That's all. So what they are basically saying, these are the only 7 ways you can say anything. You can have any knowledge for that matter. And yes, positive, negative, indescribable, then indescribable positive, indescribable negative, indescribable. Very good. So ये याद रखने वाली चीजें हैं, इसको याद ही रखना पड़ता है, वो हो जाती है. If you revise 10 times, याद तो हो जाएगा. Now, every judgment that you said, okay, in a घट अस्ति, right? घट means घड़ा, ये संस्कृत शब्द है, घट अस्ति. तो उसके पीछे स्यात इसलिए लगाना है, चेयर है. तो चेयर सिर्फ है नहीं, एक पर्टिकुलर कंटेक्स्ट से somehow in this particular scenario, like that, all the qualifications, फिर चेयर है. Otherwise what happens? Only घट अस्थि becomes absolute statement, which is not true. That's the whole logic of ये सप्तभंगी. ठीक है? क्वेश्चंस देखे समझ में आ गया. बॉन्डेज लिबरेशन तो पता ही है, वो कषाय होता है, फिर वो उसका एक प्रोसेस है बस. आशव है, निर्जरा है, एंड देन कैवल्य ज्ञान है, सिद्धशीला है. वो वर्ड्स एक बार याद रखे तो सब, you just connect the points, you realize. Revision is very, very important. I think, I hope you very strongly realize that revisit करना बार बार जरूरी है तो इंटरेस्टिंग. If you go with the interest कि अरे हाँ ऐसा था, okay, go back and read. Don't read it like a very you know painful stuff. It is interesting. Somebody has put a lot of pain and written for last 1000 years. So it's interesting. Okay. The doctrine of relativism of Jain philosophy cannot be logically sustained without postulating absolutism. Critically examine this view and give reasons in the favor of your answer. मुझे ये बताओ डिमांड क्या है क्वेश्चन, वो समझ में आए तो भी काफी. What is the demand and what will be the broadly subheadings? Question number 1. The doctrine of relativism, that is Tyadavad of Jain philosophy, cannot be logically sustained without absolutism. किसका मतलब है ये, कौन बोल रहा होगा ये? Who talks about absolutism in Indian philosophy? Come on, never Charvaka. Charvaka इतने डिस्कशन में नहीं पड़ता, वो पहले बोलते हैं हमने डिस्कस ही नहीं करना. Absolutism. Indian philosophy is interesting. Contemporary Western is the most difficult part of. Yes, contemporary Western is difficult, but that's because you might have just read from net notes and not try to understand from somebody who understands it. Otherwise, that's also not very tough. Even existentialism, it is tough. I am not saying it is intellectually taxing, but once you understand what Heidegger actually said about temporality and others, what Sartre said, what Kierkegaard talked about different phases of aesthetic phase and religious phase and moral, then you realize that it's not very, only words are problematic, concept is same only. And then only it is interesting. Okay. Indian philosophy interesting तो लगेगी, हम इंडियन है तो इंडियन तो लगेगी. Okay, the doctrine of relativism of Jain philosophy. तो relative साध्यवाद को एब्सोल्यूटिज्म कौन है? वेदांत. एब्सोल्यूटिज्म शंकराचार्य. तो जैनिज्म का रिलेटिव का क्रिटिसिज्म हमने पढ़ा है, वो साध्यवाद का क्रिटिसिज्म, साध्यवाद के क्रिटिसिज्म में भी नोट्स में देखिए आप, उसको शंकराचार्य वहां मिलेंगे आप. ये क्या मतलब है? There is a clear-cut criticism by Vedantins, especially Advait Vedantis, that relativism doesn't make any sense. That if everything is relative, something has to be. If something is relative means what? Something is absolute, and from that point of view, something is relative. Yes, very good. Temporary and permanent. So everything is exactly the same logic Vedanta gives with respect to Buddhism. यस, सो एब्सोल्यूट है इसलिए रिलेटिव है. तो पहले आपको इसमें क्या करना है, डिमांड क्या है? ब्रीफली एक्सप्लेन साध्यवाद, देन एक्सप्लेन द क्रिटिसिज्म ऑफ साध्यवाद बाय वेदांत, एंड देन critically examine Vedanta's view. So again bring back the, and that is also there in the notes, how Jaina try to defend themselves by defending, giving argument in support of relativism. आगे समझ में, तो उस दिशा में वो जाना चाहिए. ठीक है. हाउ डज जैना व्यू, इस पे करने की जरूरत है या समझ में आ गया? थोड़ा एक्सप्लेन करें. हाँ वही मैं बोल रहा था, पहला ही सवाल था. तो इसमें इंट्रोडक्शन में हम लिखेंगे साध्यवाद क्या है, और generally you introduce the whole of Jainism, how anekantavada, relativism, everything will brought into picture. Now the difference is conclusion and introduction बहुत बार ऐसा लगता है सेम ही लिख रहे हैं हम, conclusion थोड़ा अलग होता है. conclusion वो एक जनरल समरी हो सकता है, फ्यूचरिस्टिक हो सकता है, एंड इट कैन ऑल्सो बी एप्रिशिएटिव ऑफ द थिंकर. उसका कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन को रिकॉग्नाइज करने के लिए हो सकता है, क्योंकि उसके पहले जस्ट क्रिटिसिज्म होता है ना. सो फिर यू briefly explain Sadyavad, the concept of relativism, 3-4 points you mentioned. You already know the points. What is Sadyavad? Now, Vedanta is Shankara's. Sida will write Shankar. criticism. So here the concept of absolute. First explain the concept of Brahm is an absolute reality, and without absolute, logically it is not possible to have relative. So first of all explain, according to Shankaracharya, Brahm is the absolute thing, that's all, it's a reality. So relativism doesn't work everywhere. Another thing, logically, relativism automatically invites or proves or justifies absolutism, because logically consistent, because if something is relative, means something has to be absolute. Yes, yes, you can also mention here, if something is impermanent or temporary, that means something has to be permanent. Otherwise, on which plane the temporary is moving? Because when you say xyz is temporary, the xyz the conception of xyz is at least consistent. The concept of consistency, the concept of permanency has to be there to consider that to be temporary. When, and इसमें example भी दे, like when we conceptualize reality as segregated, that means the concept of reality being one unity is inherent, because there is a conception of unity, there is a recognition of segregation. Otherwise, what is the point of segregation if there is no concept of unity? कोई अगर यूनाइटेड ही नहीं है तो डिवाइडेड कैसे हो सकता? ओके, इफ देर इज नो कंसेप्ट, ये एग्जांपल बुक्स में भी है, इफ देर इज नो कंसेप्ट ऑफ लाइट, देर इज नथिंग कॉल्ड डार्कनेस. ये एक सब्सटेंशिएशन के लिए, क्योंकि लॉजिकली कंसिस्टेंट का क्वेश्चन पूछा है, कुछ सवाल है? हाँ, नहीं, ये ड्यूअलिज्म नहीं है. ड्यूअलिज्म का मतलब होता है दो के अलावा कुछ नहीं है. सांख्य जो है वो ड्यूअलिस्टिक स्कूल है. मोनिज्म, ड्यूअलिज्म, प्लूरलिज्म, एक दो अनेक. हियर इट इज, यू कैन से देयर इज नथिंग कॉल्ड दिस पर्टिकुलर वर्ड बट कॉन्ट्ररिज्म, बट देयर इज नथिंग दैट काइंड ऑफ वर्ड. समझने के लिए बता रहा हूं मैं. अगर it is automatically, if there is no, for example, just imagine there was no light or there was no darkness, only light everywhere. Why would you call it light then? Because there is something dark, then only something is light. Otherwise everything is dark, then there is, what's the concept of light? concept ही नहीं बनती, वो कोई है ही नहीं. तो फिर इमेजिनेशन हो सकता है बट कंसेप्ट नहीं बन सकते ना. इमेजिनेशन और कंसेप्ट में फर्क है, ठीक है. बट देन you have to Jainism's response. कहाँ गया? Critically examine this view and give reasons. Now here what basically you have to write is, you don't write Jainism's response but criticism of this view. सब हेडिंग क्वेश्चन के हिसाब से हो तो एग्जामिनर को पता चलता है दिस मतलब कौन सा, क्योंकि क्वेश्चन में ऐसे पूछा है ना, क्रिटिकली एग्जामिन दिस व्यू, तो आप वही लिखो, उनको समझ में आ जाता है. मैं यू माइट आस्क दिस मतलब कौन सा व्यू, एंड इसमें यू हैव टू ट्राई टू रीएस्टैब्लिश बात. ओके, बिकॉज इफ एब्सोल्यूटिज्म इज देयर, दैट मीन्स रिलेटिविज्म इज आल्सो देयर. उन्हीं का व्यू उन्हीं के ऊपर. सेकंड, according to Jaina also, there is this concept of praman, there is a concept of absolute truth. Yes, तीर्थंकार है, केवल ज्ञान है, केवल ज्ञान रिलेटिव नहीं है. So Jainism is not rejecting absolutism, but they are saying the knowledge through the judgment about worldly things is relative. तो re-establish कर दिया. यस, बिकॉज क्वेश्चन तीनों पूछा है ना, सैद्वाद तो लिखना ही पड़ेगा, देन द क्रिटिसिज्म एंड देन रीएस्टेब्लिशिंग द सैद्वाद एंड देन यू कंक्लूड। अगेन जैनिज्म स्पेशली अगर सैद्वाद पे क्वेश्चन है, अनेकांतवाद पे, तो कंक्लूजन फिक्स है। क्या है कंक्लूजन? हमने इस पे भी बात की थी। The contribution of Jainism to diversity of thoughts, acceptance of thoughts, inclusion or inclusive nature of Jainism, propagating respect to the opinions of the others. क्या बात है? तो आप अगर कुछ बोल रहे हो वो आपके पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से सही हो सकता है, हम कहाँ बोल रहे हैं कुछ की गलत ही है, आपका हमारा ही सही है। You getting the point? तो सैद्वाद is considered is very famous in the world generally, contribution में it has supported the concept of pluralistic thought process or respect to the opinions of the others, thoughts of the other, ideologies of the others. ये कंक्लूजन है, क्योंकि क्वेश्चन भी सैद्वाद पे ही है। ठीक है, नेक्स्ट, हाउ डज जैन व्यू कर्मा, जैन व्यू ऑफ कर्मा बियर अपॉन देयर सेटेरियोलॉजी? सेटेरियोलॉजी मीन्स पिछले साल लाया था सवाल, व्हाट इज सेटेरियोलॉजी? बट व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ सेटेरियोलॉजी? वी डोंट यूज इट आवर सिलेबस, बुक्स में ज्यादा नहीं है, इसलिए मैं पूछ रहा हूँ। सेटेरियोलॉजी मीन्स क्या होता है? स्टडी, कुछ शास्त्र, कुछ कंसेप्शन, क्लब ऑफ कंसेप्शन। सेटेरियोलॉजी मीन्स स्टडी ऑफ और थियरी ऑफ मोक्ष, लिबरेशन, साल्वेशन, बेसिकली थियरी ऑफ साल्वेशन बोलते हैं उसको। इट इज कॉल्ड थियरी ऑफ साल्वेशन। बेसिकली क्या क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं उसको, अदर वर्ड इन आवर संस्कृत दिस थिंग इज मोक्ष शास्त्र। तो जैनिज्म का अपना मोक्ष शास्त्र है, सबका अपना अपना मोक्ष शास्त्र है ना, कि ऐसे ऐसे करेंगे तो मोक्ष पे जाएंगे, उसके पीछे का ये लॉजिक। निर्वाण शास्त्र भी बोल सकते हैं उसको, मोक्ष शास्त्र भी बोल सकते हैं। तो सेटेरियोलॉजी इज थियरी ऑफ और आइडिया ऑफ साल्वेशन। हाउ डज जैन व्यू ऑफ कर्मा बियर अपॉन देयर सेटेरियोलॉजी? व्हाट इज द क्वेश्चन? बेसिकली उनका जो कंसेप्ट ऑफ कर्मा है उसका इन्फ्लुएंस ऑन बॉन्डेज लिबरेशन। तो पूरा बॉन्डेज, द प्रोसेस ऑफ बॉन्डेज यू नो, कर्म से ही आता है, कर्म पुद्गल है ना, घातिया कर्म, अघातिया कर्म, हार्मफुल एक्शंस, नॉन हार्मफुल एक्शंस। सो हार्मफुल एक्शंस क्रिएट कषाय, ठीक है, स्टिकी सब्सटेंस, देन कर्म पुद्गल इज इन्वर्टेड, देन द सोल जीवा गेट्स इनटू बॉन्डेज। सो पूरा कर्म से ही हो रहा है, एंड उसको जो लिबरेशन है उसमें भी कर्म है। कहाँ है? लिबरेशन में ये 3 क्यों लिखा मैंने? 1 2 3। सम्यक, सम्यक व्यू, सम्यक नॉलेज, और व्यू, फेथ, परसेप्शन एक ही होता है। सम्यक ज्ञान, ओके, सम्यक, दिस इज सम्यक, व्हाट इज इट कॉल्ड? दिस इज सम्यक ज्ञान एंड सम्यक कर्म। सम्यक फेथ को क्या बोलते हैं? वो अचानक भूल गया मैं, क्या वर्ड है वो फेथ के लिए? सम्यक श्रद्धा, राइट? रिमेंबर या नहीं? तो ये सम्यक कर्म क्या है? एंड देन दैट थ्रू दिस सम्यक कर्म यू गेट रीड ऑफ कषाय, फिर वो निर्जरा हो जाता है, एंड यू गेट रीड ऑफ ऑल द एक्शंस, कर्मास, कर्म पुद्गलास बेसिकली, बिकॉज एवरी कर्म, अघातीय कर्म creates karma pudgala which creates bondage. So you reduce the घातिया कर्म, घटिया जिसको बोल सकते हैं, घातिया शब्द है वहां से, जिस घात इज हार्म, यू माइट हैव नोट, तो घातिया कर्म उसका भी है, पूरा नोट्स में है, घातिया कौन से होते हैं, वाचक है, मनस है, वो सब बहुत चीजें डिटेल्स में देख। तो लिखना क्या है, क्वेश्चन का डिमांड का ओरिएंटेशन क्या है, हाउ डज जैन व्यू ऑफ कर्मा, सो बेसिकली एक्सप्लेन कर्मा, डिफरेंट कर्मस, वो उसका टेबल है, कम टू impact on bondage, then liberation, that's all. hmm. हाँ, कंसेप्ट ही है, but they have given concept saying that this is reality. हमारे लिए क्या, सी हम, हमारे लिए कुछ नहीं है, हमारे लिए, हम फिलोसॉफी स्टूडेंट है, सबकी रियलिटी सही है, वो रियलिटी है उनके लिए, वो कोई आइडिया नहीं है सिर्फ, नहीं वो उसमें आप रियलिटी का मीनिंग अलग ले रहे हो, है ना, कि इट्स लाइक दिस, कि मुझे अगर थोड़ा फीवर है और मुझे बहुत ठंड लग रही है, एसी बंद करो, ये मेरी रियलिटी सही है, बट मैं, मेरे लिए तो वही रियल है, क्या करोगे आप बोलोगे नहीं पैरासीटामोल ले लो ठीक लगे, मुझे मुझे पैरासीटामोल नहीं खाना और मुझे ऐसे नहीं चाहिए, तो ये तरीका नहीं होता, वो इतनी लॉजिकल रियलिटी होनी चाहिए। सी इट इज नॉट जस्ट इमेजिनेशन ऑफ रियलिटी नहीं है ये सब्जेक्टिव एक्सपीरियंस रियलिटी नहीं है ये थियरी ऑफ रियलिटी होता है, मेटाफिजिक्स। थियरी का मतलब क्या होता है, इट हैज टू बी वेरी वेरी लॉजिकल and it has to be acceptable and applicable to all irrespective of their condition. आपके, हाँ हाँ, theory of reality है, it's imagination of reality नहीं है, theory of reality। तो theory और imagination में फर्क क्या होता है, theory में logic होता है, without logic there is no theory। So what we are studying in philosophy is not imagination of reality, कोई बैठ के ऐसे सोचा मतलब मुझे लगता है भगवान ही है, no, he has to explain he or she has to explain in terms of theory। Okay, एक्सप्लेन द जैन व्यू ऑफ सेवन फोल्ड सप्तभंगी ने, इसको मैं एक्सप्लेन नहीं करूंगा, सीधा स्ट्रेट फोल्ड नोट से आया, देखो 2021 में, पिछले साल 15 मार्क के लिए नोट्स आए एज इट इज, ठीक है, और एक्सप्लेन है, कुछ ज्यादा उस पर नहीं है। एग्जामिन द कंसेप्ट ऑफ कर्मा अकॉर्डिंग टू जैनिज्म एंड हाउ डज बियर अपॉन देयर कंसेप्शन, ऑलरेडी हमने देखा कंसेप्ट ऑफ कर्मा अकॉर्डिंग टू जैनिज्म एंड हाउ डज इट बियर अपॉन देयर कंसेप्शन, देयर कंसेप्शन कहाँ गया वो, हाँ ये यही क्वेश्चन है बेसिकली, ठीक है, ये 2020 में आया था ना, मुझे थोड़ा सा क्वेश्चन आधा अधूरा क्यों लग रहा है, एक मिनट, जस्ट 1 सेकंड, तुरंत हो जाएगा। या फिर कंसेप्शन मींस दे माइट हैव आस्क्ड वेरी जनरल क्वेश्चन, हाँ दैट्स व्हाट, नो कंसेप्शन ऑफ लिबरेशन, मुझे थोड़ा वो इसलिए आधा लगा, कंसेप्शन, वो ये यहाँ पे टाइपिंग एरर हुआ है, कंसेप्शन ऑफ लिबरेशन, ठीक है ना, सेम सेटेरियोलॉजी, एग्जैक्टली सेम क्वेश्चन रिपीट हुआ है, जस्ट इमेजिन 2020 में ये आया है 10 मार्क के लिए और 2022 में ये आया है, कोई फर्क नहीं है क्वेश्चन में, एज इट इज क्वेश्चन आया है, जस्ट इमेजिन, तो ये बहुत बड़ा अपने आप में ये होता है पॉजिटिव। एक्सप्लेन द डिफरेंस, एक्सप्लेन द डिफरेंस बिटवीन कंसेप्शन ऑफ रियलिटी बिटवीन चारवाक जैनिज्म, तो हमने ऑलरेडी चारवाक में डिस्कस किया, ठीक है। हाउ इज रियलिटी डिफाइंड बाय जैनास, हाउ इज द थियरी ऑफ रियलिटी रिफ्लेक्टेड इन देयर व्यू ऑफ जजमेंट्स, हाउ इज द रियलिटी डिफाइंड बाय जैनास, yes, the question is asking about the whole categories of dravya, extended, not extended, dharma, adharma, space, time, extended, जीव अजीव, इन जीव, बद्ध and मुक्त, इन बद्ध, there are 5 senses, 3 senses, 2 senses, 1 senses, वो सब चीजें लिखनी है और नोट्स में 1 2, ये सीधा है 20 मार्क के लिए नोट छापनी है, आसान सवाल था। हाउ do the Jaina philosophers explain bondage? The whole process of bondage, that is? Yes. Yes. Kashai, sticky substance, accumulator, pudgal, and all that. What according to them is the distinction between liberated soul and bound soul? अभी just बुद्ध बद्ध and मुक्त, ये वाली चीज, ठीक है? Distinction between liberated soul and bound soul. What do the Jainas think about condition of the liberated soul? सिद्धशीला वाला पूरा कंसेप्ट, तीर्थंकार का पूरा कंसेप्ट. बेसिकली तीर्थंकार एंड सिद्धशीला थोड़ा अलग है. तीर्थंकार is somebody who not just achieves but also gives some command, some message. Somebody, तीर्थंकार is something that you follow something, some message from their life. ठीक है? तो वो पूरा बॉन्डेज लिबरेशन का कितना स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड क्वेश्चन आए हैं. बस हमें बॉन्डेज लिबरेशन पढ़ना है और लिखना. एंड जस्ट इमेजिन इफ यू हैव ऑलरेडी ऑल्सो प्रैक्टिस्ड इन जून जुलाई अगस्त आंसर राइटिंग, आई कैन गारंटी यू 30-40% क्वेश्चन से भी लगे ये तो मैंने लिखा हुआ था. अभी कम से कम पेपर 1 के लिए तो बोल सकते हैं. ऐसे ही होता है. द जैन मेटाफिजिक्स इज रिलेटिविस्टिक एंड रियलिस्टिक प्लूरलिज्म. देखो आगे आरआरपी, यही तो वर्ड हमने बोला था, रिलेटिविस्टिक रियलिस्टिक प्लूरलिज्म. रिलेटिविस्टिक मतलब रियलिज्म, वो द्रव्य वगैरह. प्लूरलिज्म इज दैट्स ऑल. एंड इसी 3 सब हेडिंग से लिखो, 15 मार्क का है. तो वो अच्छी बात है. वो सी दैट कम्स विद प्रैक्टिस, एंड फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर पर्पज आई जनरली इंसिस्ट ऑन सब हेडिंग. Because what happens with subheading, you limit yourself and you know what is going to come. So in fact, generally when you write answers and when I will be discussing the question papers, most of the time what I say, you write subheading in the page on by pencil पहले ही, and then start writing answer. Automatically आपको रुकना पड़ता है वहां. Otherwise क्या होता है, एक ही concept you keep explaining and then other concept remains unexplained. स्पेस ही नहीं मिलता, टाइम ही नहीं मिलता. इतना हो गया, मेरा पूरा ही पेज भर गया सिर्फ कर्म लिखते लिखते. ये नहीं होना. वो प्रैक्टिस से आएगा. ठीक है, और प्रैक्टिस करो तो आ जाएगा. ओके. कैन दी तत्वार्थ थियरी ऑफ जैनिज्म इज एक्सेप्टेबल फॉर साइंटिफिक एक्सप्लेनेशन? ये थोड़ा सा अलग सवाल था. तत्वार्थ थियरी मतलब क्या? बेसिकली उनकी थियरी ऑफ रियलिटी. तत्व इज रियलिटी. ओके, अर्थ इज हियर बेसिकली थियरी बोल सकते हैं. जैसे तत्वार्थ थियरी मींस द्रव्य वाला जो पूरा कॉन्सेप्ट है वो कितना साइंटिफिकली एक्सप्लेनेबल है. एक्चुअली है भी, बिकॉज देयर कैटेगराइजेशन इन एक्सटेंडेड नॉट एक्सटेंडेड इज साइंटिफिक. मटेरियल नॉन मटेरियल. एक्सटेंडेड इज समथिंग which occupies space is extended, something which does not occupy space is unextended. Then their categorization of jiva ajiva is also very scientific in nature, because in science also we have 2 categories, living, non-living. So you're getting the point. Only thing is, whenever there is this baddha and mukta comes into picture, it is spiritual connotation, so scientifically cannot be proven. Okay, but they clearly say that as long as you are in body, it is limited. So in scientifically that is also proved that body is also limited. That's why 1 sense, 2 sense, 3 sense, 4 sense, 5 sense, like that they have given. So लिखना वही है, but आपको you have to first explain all the concepts, that is द्रव्य and वो categorization and all that, and then scientific explanation और scientific evaluation इस सब हेडिंग में आपको वो बाकी चीजें लिखनी. कैसे लिखेंगे इसको, थोड़ा सा अलग सवाल है. तत्वार्थ थ्योरी मीन्स थियरी ऑफ रियलिटी. 15 मार्कर है. So first what you to write? Introduction. Jain's theory of reality. You talk about that being realistic, relativistic pluralism. Pluralism means there is no 1 or 2 things, there are plural things in the world. Everything has a soul, even this chair has a soul. Then theory of reality. इसमें फिर वही आप निकालेंगे पूरा, सॉरी, जीव अजीव जीव, मुक्त बद्ध, इन बद्ध देयर आर 1 सेंस 2 सेंस 3 सेंस 4 सेंस 5 सेंस, जो भी, ठीक है। एंड हियर धर्म अधर्म, हियर धर्म एंड अधर्म हैज नथिंग टू डू विद मोरालिटी, दिस धर्म इज एक्शन नॉन एक्शन है, देन स्पेस एंड टाइम, इसी को एक्सप्लेन करना है थ्योरी ऑफ रियलिटी। एंड देन कम्स साइंटिफिक इवैल्यूएशन। तो इसमें आप कैसे कर सकते हैं, पहले द्रव्य के बारे में कमेंट करो, जीव अजीव के बारे में कमेंट करो, एक्सटेंडेड अनएक्सटेंडेड के बारे में कमेंट करो, मुक्त एंड बद्ध के बारे में कमेंट, एक एक लाइन में, 6-7 लाइन तो उसी में हो जाएगी, हो गया, उससे ज्यादा नहीं लिखना है, 15 मार्क के लिए और क्या ही लिखेंगे, और फिर कंक्लूड करना है। तो कंक्लूजन में अगेन यू राइट पॉजिटिव, दैट इज क्लोजेस्ट टू मॉडर्न साइंटिफिक एक्सप्लेनेशन, इस टाइप का एक जनरल पॉजिटिव कंट्रीब्यूशन वाला कमेंट वहां पे लिख सकते हैं, क्लोजेस्ट टू साइंटिफिक, जैसे जीव अजीव का कंसेप्शन, वो सब चीज क्लोजेस्ट टू दी मॉडर्न थिंकिंग, ठीक है। एग्जामिन जैन स्टांस ऑन नया, हाउ डज इट डिफर फ्रॉम स्यादवाद। देखो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन, मैंने इसलिए पहले ही बोला, बहुत लोग कंफ्यूज होते हैं कि नए सप्तभंगी नय स्यादवाद एक ही चीज है। देखो डिफरेंस पूछा है सीधा, नय इज जजमेंट एंड स्यादवाद इज रिलेटिविज्म। सो सत और उसके बाद घट अस्थि इज नय, बट इट हैज टू बी applied with qualified by स्यादवाद, then you write सत, सॉरी स्यात, जो भी है, ठीक है। डिफरेंशिएट द कंसेप्ट ऑफ कैवल्य एज डिस्कस्ड इन जैन एंड योगा, अभी मैंने बोला वो बस लिबरेशन दोनों का अलग अलग है, वो कर्म रिलेटेड है, यहाँ पे क्या है अष्टांग योग है, पूरा प्रोसेस ही अलग है, वहाँ पे रिगर है, यहाँ पे मेडिटेशन वगैरह पे ज्यादा फॉलो है, वहाँ पे रिचुअल ज्यादा है, जैनिज्म में रिचुअल बहुत ज्यादा है, रिचुअलिस्टिक है, मतलब प्यूरिटी ओरिएंटेड है, यहाँ पे एफर्ट ओरिएंटेड है। पतंजलि इज ऑल अबाउट एफर्ट ना, यू डू आसन, यम नियम प्राणायाम प्रत्याहार आसन, ये सब चीजें वहां पे। जैन का कंसेप्शन ऑफ द्रव्य, वही डायग्राम लिख के पूरा नीचे सब लिखना है, वो नोट्स में जैसा है। कुछ डाउट है तो बीच में मुझे पूछ लेना, बिकॉज आई एम नॉट एक्सप्लेनिंग, बिकॉज आई वॉन्ट यू टू नाउ रिवाइज, जस्ट ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग सेशंस है बेसिकली ये, इसमें कोई ज्यादा मैं नया कुछ नहीं पढ़ा रहा हूँ, ठीक है ना। व्हाट डू संवर एंड निर्जरा मीन, व्हाट इज संवर एंड निर्जर, व्हाट इज आश्रव, that flow of karma pudgal is ashrav, samvar is stopping that flow, new flow नहीं आना है, निर्जर is, अभी तो बताओ, ऑलरेडी जो कर्म पुद्गल है उसको शेड करना है, थ्रो निर्जर करना है, ठीक है। तो संवर निर्जर वो पूरा कषाय से लेके पूरा एक्सप्लेन करना है। आश्रव, आश्रव इज द फ्लो ऑफ कर्म पुद्गल, राइट, कषाय इज द स्टिकी सब्सटेंस, समझ में आया पूरा डायग्राम, इसलिए वो डायग्राम निकाली थी मैंने, इफ यू रिमेंबर ड्यूरिंग फाउंडेशन, वो इमेज डायग्राम की हो तो आपको सब समझ में आ जाएगा, यहाँ पे वो गोल वाला है, फिर वो चिपकने के लिए आता है, व्हाट डू संवर एंड निर्जरा मींस, संवर पहले एक्सप्लेन करो, निर्जरा एक्सप्लेन, व्हाट इज द सिग्निफिकेंस इन जैन थ्योरी ऑफ लिबरेशन, पूरा उसी पे पूरा लिबरेशन है। संवर इज स्टॉपिंग ऑफ न्यू फ्लो, निर्जरा इज shedding off or removing of the existing karma pudgals. बाकी details of explain the concept of karma and discuss various types of karma according to Jaina philosophy. This, as I mentioned, that is there in notes also. घातीय कर्म, अघातीय कर्म, वो पूरा as it is है, वो तक पूरा वो टेबल है, you just elaborate that table. Analyze the relation between Saptabhangiraya and Anekantavada. What is the relation between Saptabhangiraya and Anekantavada? Yes. Anekantavada is pluralism. Saptamangina is okay. No. Seven realities. Then many why? No. So the fourth nay is the crucial part here. Yes. And because something is indescribable means it has so many aspects that it cannot be described. तो अनेकांतवाद है तभी तो इनडिस्क्राइबेबल है, तभी तो सप्तभंगिन है, नहीं तो बुद्धिस्ट का चतुष्कोटि होता है. बुद्धिस्ट इज नॉट सप्तभंगिन है, इट इज ओनली चतुर्भंगिन है. You know this one? Buddhist has this concept of chatuskoti, that is only four: asti, nasti, asti, nasti, and non-existent. मतलब जो भी उसका चतुष्कोटि का पूरा कॉन्सेप्ट है, बट यहाँ पे 7 है कैटेगरी. ठीक है. Then critically evaluate Jain doctrine of relative pluralism. And see, looking at the questions, are you not able to say that? See that लगभग सेम ही एक वेरी बाउंड्रीड सिलेबस से सब क्वेश्चंस आते हैं. क्वेश्चन कोई बहुत इधर उधर का नहीं आया है. इसमें से कोई भी शब्द ऐसा नहीं कि आपको पता ही नहीं है. सप्तमंगी ने अनेकांतवाद, बॉन्डेज लिबरेशन, इसके अलावा और वो कर्म वाला थ्योरी, उसके अलावा क्या है जैनिज्म में. इतने साल की 12 तक आ गए हम. इसमें कोई भी स्किप नहीं है सवाल. इस रैंडम नहीं है, ये एग्जॉस्टिव लिस्ट है 2022 तक. कम से कम 2010 के बाद तो एग्जॉस्टिव, मतलब 11-12 के बाद जो है उसके बाद का तो एग्जॉस्टिव है. इसमें कोई मिस नहीं हुआ है सवाल वो लिस्ट में. 2013 में आए, 14 में, 15 में, 11 में, 11 में तो 2 आए हैं. फिर उसके 10 का पहले का छोड़ दो क्योंकि वो 30 मार्कर 60 मार्कर सीन था, उसको छोड़ो आप. कम से कम 11 से ऊपर तो सेम क्वेश्चन. व्हाट इज अकॉर्डिंग टू जैनिज्म इज पाथ टू लिबरेशन? सम्यक त्रिरत्न. But पहले you have to explain the whole process of nirja, samvar and all, and how it happens is path. Samyak Triratna. Ratnatrayi it is called. See, Triratna is a Buddhist concept. Ratnatrayi is a Jainic concept. Whenever the word Triratna comes, be sure that it is Buddhist. What are these? Last time it had come question. Buddhism में कल देखेंगे हम. Three jewels of Buddhism. बुद्धम, धम्मम, संगम. बुद्धा संग धम्म, बुद्धा धम्म संग. रत्नत्रयी इन जैनिज्म इज यस सम्यक फेथ, सम्यक नॉलेज, सम्यक कंडक्ट. KFC याद रखे आपने, वेरी गुड. जैनिज्म का कौन KFC याद रखेगा? ठीक है, पता है ना, एकदम कॉन्ट्रडी है जैनिज्म और KFC. नहीं अच्छी बात है, मैं बस मजाक के इसमें बोल रहा हूँ. एनीवे ओके. ये देखो 30 मार्क के लिए आया था. इज सयादवाद सेल्फ कॉन्ट्राडिक्टरी डॉक्ट्रिन. वही जो हमने एक्सप्लेन किया कि वो सेल्फ कॉन्ट्राडिक्टरी नहीं है. पहले उसको सयादवाद लिखो, बट ये 30 मार्क के लिए. इसको मान के चलो ये 20 मार्क में आ गया सर सवाल. 30 में आ सकता है तो वही 20 में भी तो आ सकता है. ठीक है. सो यू राइट दैट व्हाट इज सयादवाद एंड इट्स क्रिटिसिज्म एंड देन इट्स रिबटल. ठीक है. बहुत सारे हैं. फिर बाकी तो सिमिलर. व्हाट इज द रिलेशन बिटवीन अनेकांतवाद सत्यम, वही 2001 में आया. इतना बस ऐसे ही लिस्ट है. इफ यू वांट टू एक्सपाउंड अनेकांतवाद ऑफ जैनिज्म, इट इज कंसिस्टेंट थ्योरी और नॉट. ठीक है. सो दैट इज दिस इज चारवाका एंड जैनिज्म. नाउ what do you think was the result of this lecture? Because as I said, and this model is nowhere else. Like nobody takes lectures just before, because briefly describing philosophy is not easy. You can take foundation lecture because आराम से explain everything, but briefly crash course करके कोई, मैंने तो हमारे समय भी नहीं था, अभी भी कोई मुझे नहीं लगता है. टेस्ट सीरीज होती है. So what is your take? Like what is at the end, what did you gain, what you did not gain or expect to gain? See, because in philosophy, because it is a limited syllabus, it is always helpful that most of the chapters you are able to imagine in one picture. It always helps, because why, like when the moment question is read, why I am able to immediately think इधर 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 है, because बहुत बार पढ़ा है तो एक पिक्चर में आता है. मेरे लिए जैनिज्म मतलब ये सामने पिक्चर आ गई. इसको माइंड मैप भी बोलते हैं बहुत लोग मार्केट में, बट माइंड मैप कागज पे नहीं होना चाहिए, माइंड में होना चाहिए. यू नो दिस आयरनी, यू नो व्हाट इज आयरनी. तो मार्केट में माइंड मैप भी बिकते हैं, बट वो माइंड मैप माइंड पे कभी आता नहीं, वो पेपर पे ही रहता है. माइंड मैप अपने आप में माइंड में होना चाहिए, किसी और के पेपर पे होगी क्या फायदा है. तो माइंड मैप क्या है ना, मोस्टली पढ़ सकते हैं आप, उसकी मदद भी ले सकते हैं, ऐसा नहीं कि उसको कोई मदद नहीं होती, बट बेस्ट है कि आप अपने थिंकिंग में उसको मैप करो. न्यूरन कनेक्शन होना चाहिए ना, न्यूरॉन कनेक्शन होना चाहिए ना, अदरवाइज पेपर पे सिर्फ लिंक करके स्यादवाद सप्तभंगी ने ऐसे करके क्या फायदा, unless it is there. So the thing is, mind map has to be in mind, not on the paper. So what I request you now is, number one, go and read the only notes, no books, start to end, Charvaka, start to end Jainism. You will understand, I can guarantee now. But if you do it today, if you do it 2 days later, first of all it will be piled up, दूसरे आ जाएंगे टॉपिक्स, और दूसरा याद ही नहीं रहेगा. And then automatically you start feeling from inside that अरे इसका तो माइंड मैप कुछ बना सकते हैं. And then it will be like revision is done. So within 20 days, your majority of your philosophy optional is done. So by the time result comes, whatever is the result, accordingly we will plan. Mostly positive आएगा, फिर और पढ़ेंगे. ठीक है? So thank you very much. That's all from my side. If you have any question, please ask. I am waiting for 1 minute, 2 minutes. Otherwise, see you tomorrow. कल का भी live है YouTube पे. I'm just informing those who have not taken admission but want to join. बुद्धिज्म पे है कल, ठीक है. बाकी फिर परसों से नहीं होगा, परसों से फिर क्लास नहीं होगा. ऐसे इधर ही वही 8 से 11 नॉर्मल ऑफलाइन, आप तो ऑफलाइन ही आओगे. ठीक है. बुद्धिज्म है, सिर्फ बुद्धिज्म है, क्योंकि बुद्धिज्म थोड़ा बड़ा है ना, स्कूल ऑफ बुद्धिज्म भी है. ठीक है. इसमें भी कुछ, क्योंकि क्या होगा, इसमें भी कुछ डाउट्स होंगे, तो आई एम एक्सपेक्टिंग कि कल आप पूछेंगे, तो उसमें भी थोड़ा टाइम जा सकता है, क्योंकि वो पूछेंगे, आप पढ़ेंगे तो डाउट्स आएंगे. ठीक है. चलिए देन, थैंक यू वेरी मच, बाय बाय.